Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. I hope you're having a fantastic day. How is everybody doing? David is, for some reason, playing with a camera there.
These are one of the old ones. I had to break them out to find some lost footage, but these are from the Dearborn days, man.
Wow. When you were stopped by the police for
yeah. So this was at one point in a police impound.
That's funny.
And then we had to get a court order to get them to give it back. I should just give these away to someone who wants collector's item.
So today we are going to do very interesting things. I'm not going to bore you with David. Everybody sees him every day. I'm pretty sure people are sick of it. But Cameron has never been on this channel before. So hey, Cameron, what's up?
That's true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
It's because he's scared.
I watch. I am. I'm terrified.
No, I'm saying AP. No, I'm saying AP's scared of you.
Oh, okay.
He's like a fragile atheist. If he's scared, you don't want to be. You don't want to be around. One Christian is enough for him to be around. He doesn't want. He doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to like a bunch of Christians around him influencing.
Got it.
Terrible. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So how are you doing, Cameron?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, I don't normally stream late at night, so I normally stream like during the day. But David, you sleep during the day, right? So that's why you guys always stream at night. Is that correct?
Yeah. I go to sleep around 8 to 9 in the morning, and then I sleep into the afternoon. And then,
yeah.
So one thing that people should realize, and that Cameron should realize off the very beginning, is that we are basically here to just yell at Cameron, be angry at him, ask him what in the world he was thinking, because he made a terrible alt tweet.
Stupid tweet.
Yeah,
worst tweet ever.
Worst tweet in the world.
Our intention is to make Cameron cry and quit in rage.
I'm gonna humiliate him. You be humiliated.
He already looks like he's about to cry.
Yeah, I am crying actually.
Yeah. So David, why don't you summarize why we are here?
Well,
first we should probably mention that Khalil, like people are. I can see the live chat. People are not here yet.
Yeah, Khalil said he's going to be a few minutes late, so yeah, he'll be here in a few. Which I mean, he originally said he'd be 9:30, so he's actually technically not even out late yet. But so Cameron Bertuzzi recently made a tweet saying that Christians and Muslims should unite and be on the same page about all issues, and they should unite against atheists to destroy all atheists from the world, to wage jihad against everyone, and to then be united forever as brothers in the Abrahamic faiths. And then a bunch of us looked at that and said, that is a horrible idea. And so we want to give Cameron an opportunity to defend his ridiculous thoughts.
Zoom all the way in.
So here's the tweet that we're talking about, this is probably the worst tweet that I've seen in my entire life.
It's pretty racist. It's pretty racist, actually.
And by Cameron, and it says, by the way, Christians and Muslims should work together to combat atheism. When I first saw this, I thought, I bet he's joking. And then I looked at it further and I was like, wait a minute, I don't think he's joking.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I couldn't believe it, which is
And,
why
and, and, and go back up before we see how people just completely humiliate him. Look at what he says there. Christians and Muslims should work together to combat atheism. Now, you got to look for signals. Combat there. That is one of the possible translations of the word for fight. In fight those who do not believe in Allah. It's can be translated as combat those who do not believe in Allah. And notice, here's Cameron saying that he's on the same page with Muslims in combating those who do not believe in Allah. You got to pay attention to these signals that call for openly slaughtering people.
That is a good call. And as David knows, and Cameron probably knows this too. Maybe he's behind the scenes working with them. But the Quran says in chapter 9, verse 29, that precisely this, that you are supposed to fight or combat those who do not believe in Allah and the messenger, who do not believe in the day of resurrection, and so on. So Cameron is basically kind of, in his own words, saying what the Quran is saying. How do you explain this, Cameron?
Well, so I mean, for people that don't know, this is the first time I'm on your channel. What I do on my channel, Capturing Christianity, is I at least attempt to expose the intellectual side of Christian belief. And so I focus mainly on mere Christianity. And in fact, part of my inspiration for doing what I do as a sort of quote unquote apologist is part of my background. My brother is an atheist, and his becoming an atheist actually kind of sent me on my journey into apologetics and philosophy. And so I have a really big interest in atheism, arguments for atheism, arguments against the existence of God, arguments against Christianity. And so a large part of Capturing Christianity is aimed at, combating, if you want to use the term combating, and we'll talk about that probably a little bit more later.
Combating. The correct word is jihad. Yeah.
So
your brother is an atheist, you said?
Yeah. My brother is an atheist, and
it's
so
good to know that at least one of you does something right. So that's good.
Yeah. So, anyways, the point of my ministry, and I think David and John and like a lot of these other Christian apologists have this sort of the same goal, which is to defend something like mere Christianity. But a component of mere Christianity would be theism. So, like just the idea that God exists. So, I mean, as a Christian, I want to spread the gospel. I want more people to become Christians. And one of those stepping stones to becoming a Christian, especially for an atheist who doesn't believe that God exists, one of the stepping stones is to embrace theism. And so there's a bunch of different approaches you can take to that. You can give arguments. So the idea behind the tweet was basically that there's a lot, like I watch you guys a whole lot. Like I really enjoy the content that you guys produce, especially in response to the Dawa guys and everything. And so that's kind of like my exposure to Islam, basically, is watching you guys respond to these other dudes. I don't really watch Ali Dawa. I don't watch Muhammad Hijab. Like I don't watch any really popular like Islamic apologists. So the idea behind my tweet is that there's, and actually, I don't know a whole lot of other Islamic like scholars or Muslim scholars. I don't really know who would be sort of good to quote unquote partner with to actually go about like giving arguments against atheism. So like I even made a video responding to Ali Dawa. Your debate actually, AP, with him on the contingency argument, and his version of the contingency argument that he laid out in your debate, and you gave some really good objections to it. You're like, I don't have, when I made this tweet, I'm not thinking like, let's partner with Ali Dawa and combat atheism. That's not who I have in mind. Who I have in mind are people who are sort of philosophically minded.
You want to partner with Ali Dawa on this issue. Come on. You want him to, you want to work on a contingency argument.
he's saying all of these nice things right now just to kind of soften the mood and make us less hostile.
You're not getting us off guard, Cameron. But yeah,
he even said that I raised some good objections to Al-Dawa, but I didn't hear you.
You see the level of manipulation here. It's like AP. I watched your show, and man, you made great points and so on. So therefore, agree with me. Come on.
Okay, so long story short,
you guys caught me. You caught me.
What you're saying is that you shouldn't have made that tweet. The tweet was bad, and case closed.
No, I think that it can be nuanced. There's basically the idea is I'm not saying that like Christians and Muslims should partner on everything. I think that in some circumstances there can be situations in which a Muslim and a Christian could partner together and say defend some argument for the existence of God, at least a concept of God that the two of those agree on. And so I'm thinking of this as a purely like intellectual or philosophical pursuit or approach or thing that two people are engaged in. So and I'm not saying that like they've got to obviously agree on everything, but I think that there's ways in which Muslims and Christians could work together to defend arguments against atheism or respond to objections from atheists to the existence of God. The thing is, though, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, like I don't know who the people, if there are really any, that fit this criteria of like a Muslim scholar who is familiar and appreciates the philosophy. I know Muhammad Hijab, like he's getting isn't he working on like doing his PhD in the argument from contingency? From what I've heard from him,
so you want to partner
I don't know
with him?
if that's accurate. Is that accurate?
I don't know.
I do not know.
Okay. Well, I stuff that I've heard from him, I'm not super.
We have trouble seeing past the golden showers comments and stuff like that. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the idea behind the tweet
I thought of the very same
is
thing.
fairly.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Hey, AP. I guess great minds think alike. Go ahead.
So the idea behind the tweet is.
By the way, I just wanted
the guy, man. It's like
I just wanted to point out is the way the tweet sounds is Christians and Muslims together versus atheists. That's what it sounds like. Based on what you're saying right now, as far as like, hey, because people always ask, hey, David, what are you doing? Doing live streams with an atheist? It's like, well, sometimes we disagree and then we talk about our disagreements, but a lot of times it's because we agree on something, right? We both agree on
hold that thought. Khalil Andani is here. Hello.
How
are you doing?
Hey, Khalil.
Peace be upon you.
And to you. Why is nobody responding?
I'm happy to join the party. I appreciate you guys delaying the stream a little bit. I just had to attend to my fatherly duties first.
Yeah, no problem. We got kids. We know how that works. Oh yeah, just wrapping up what I was just saying to Cam. Cam, I actually agree with you as far as like if you have, let's say, a Christian and a Muslim who are both interested in the design argument. That's something they have in common. And yeah, a Christian and Muslim could, even like work together on a live stream, doing shows, defending versions of the design argument, let's say, against atheists who are responding to them. So, as far as that goes, yeah, I would have, I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly kind of the idea behind, at least my idea behind the tweet. And I know that that's not obvious, like when you just read it. There's language in there like combat that kind of doesn't really give that impression.
Sounds like trying to.
And that was like the main.
I
that
think
was like the people
problem.
that were responding to it. Sorry, let me just finish this thought here real quick. The people that were responding to it, the people who were addressing like the language of combat. That was the sort of best response that I saw from the people that were making responses to it, because they probably just
so you know, I was just joking. I didn't think you were actually talking about anything involving.
No, I know. No, there was one guy who was Joe Schmid, Majesty of Reason. He's got a great YouTube channel. He responded to it and said basically that he's a non-theist, so he doesn't think that anyone should be combating atheism per se, but what he raised is that the word combat has a sort of negative connotation in the sense that it's kind of tribalistic, like it's tribalistic language. So that was at least what I saw, I don't really spend a whole lot of time on Twitter. I like post stuff and then I post and ghost. So I don't read like a whole lot of the responses or anything, but that was one of the responses where I was like, yeah, I probably could have used a different term. But again, we're on social media and you've got to use like language that's going to get engagement and stuff. So
to be very honest,
sort of trade-off that you got to use.
So you said combat atheism. I'm the only atheist here.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't see a problem with that.
We're combating you
with the term directly. It didn't even. I mean, that was not the problem to me, in my honest opinion. It was just the problem here was working together with Christians and Muslims to combat atheism. I mean, I didn't really pay attention to the term here and what it would imply. I think you don't have to really be stuck on that term. Others might disagree.
Well, I mean, David made an interesting point earlier that there's people who raise objections to what David does in working with you, AP. I'm like, why would a Christian partner with an atheist and try to combat, in a sense, Islam? And I think the reasons that you would give for the two of you guys working together to combat Islam would be similar reasons that I would give for a Christian and a Muslim. You've got to find the two right people to partner with, or the right people to partner with. But I think the same reasons that are sort of motivating the reasons why you guys are working together to combat Islam would be the same similar reasons that I would give for a Christian and a Muslim working together to combat or reduce atheism.
I don't think so. but we'll get to that. Let's Dr. Khalil Andani, you have barely said anything.
Because he just got here.
I thought the tweet was a problematic tweet because the sentence began with "by the way." That's just not how you begin sentences. I would mark that down. Apart from the first few words, I thought there's nothing wrong with this tweet. I was actually taken aback by how much negativity it got. Not from people like AP, because I expect people like AP to object to anything that has the word Islam. So that's not a surprise.
Yep.
But the surprise for me was that Christians were getting upset, right? And to me, that sort of tells us how much of a lack of knowledge there is on the part of contemporary online Christians, and I would probably add contemporary online Muslims, about the actual history between Islam and Christianity, and between Christendom and Islamdom, right? Because there's nothing controversial or even historically inaccurate in what Cameron said. We have so much historical precedent for Muslims and Christians working together to combat, you don't have to use that word, but to respond to various worldviews and ideologies, right? This is not a new thing. This has been going on for quite a long time. We have some very early precedents for this. We have contemporary precedents for this within the last 2 years. And I'm happy to share specifics of that. But I don't know what standard somebody would appeal to say you have a problem with it, unless, of course, you're an atheist and you felt sort of left out of the party, oh, they're ganging up on me type thing.
No. I think my problem in this is very obvious, and the problem that many Christians also have is quite obvious. I responded to the tweet by bringing up certain Quran verses which condemn Christians. I didn't even really go into the details. I just put a few things there which explicitly and clearly condemn Christians. But to me, it is just very clearly a problem, because somebody like Cameron, in good faith, may think atheism is a trend that is, taking religion away from society, that is taking the traditional way of thinking away from society. Muslims and us Christians, we have something in common. We want to preserve these things. Therefore, we should work together against this trend, against this wave. And I get that, but there is a problem attached to it here. The problem is that when we talk about Muslims, so when Cameron says Muslims, he's not talking about the people who actually are Muslims, who will be addressed by this tweet, who are meant by this tweet, not intentionally, but as a result of the tweet, are those Muslims who mostly are not really, fundamentally allied to Christian ideas. I mean, you can take the example of Muslim societies as an example. In Muslim societies, Christians are not really treated the way Muslims are treated in Christian societies. In Muslim societies, especially if they are religious, if preserving religion, if preserving traditionalism is the issue here, in Muslim societies, Islam is what is dominant, Islam is what is precious, and everything else is at the bottom. And this is only right now, it is not even that serious, because right now we are in a time where things have been modernized, although in some countries like Saudi Arabia, like the oil countries, the Arab countries, and others, things are still pretty bad for Christians. In Egypt, things are still pretty bad for the Coptic Christians. In Pakistan, they are pretty bad for the Christians there. So I understand the idea, atheism bad, let's preserve religion, let's preserve tradition, but it doesn't work, because you might be one of those Muslims who agree with it and who are peaceful, but most Muslims just are not like that.
Yeah, Cam,
Sorry, hold on, wait 1 second. What is your claim, that Muslims are not peaceful? Most Muslims are not peaceful? Is that the problem that you have with the tweet? So that the majority of Muslims described by the tweet are not peaceful?
Majority of Muslims are not peaceful in the sense that they would want a society in which both Christians and Muslims are, equal to each other and preserve each other's rights.
But this is not true.
Where
is the statistics that the most Muslims in the world today are not peaceful? Because most of the death count and bloodshed that's being committed in the world today is not by Muslims.
Okay.
When we say powers,
okay,
mostly bombing Muslim majority nations.
All right, but I didn't say. Did you hear me say that most Muslims are out there to kill?
You said most Muslims are not peaceful. That's what.
No, okay. I think it was quite clear what I meant by that. What I meant by that was most Muslims. Okay, most Muslims do not want to have an ideal society where Christians and Muslims are equal.
Okay, hold on. Equal in what? In citizenship? In what?
In rights.
That's completely wrong. That is statistically incorrect. It is proven incorrect by just the recent agreements that the representatives of most Muslims and Christians, namely the Catholics, of the agreements they've gotten into.
All right.
And we can talk about some of that if you would like.
So you are telling me that in the average Muslim society, the average Muslim, or the average Muslim society, the average Muslim state respects Christians just as much as they respect the rights of Muslims.
So that's a different claim. Now you're talking about
no,
states.
Why? Okay, people and states.
Muslim states tend to be not democratic. Okay. They don't represent the will of the populace. And the policy of a Muslim state is a governance issue. We are talking about what Muslims believe. So most Muslims believe in freedom of religion.
No, they don't.
The Al-Azhar, which represents the Sunni Muslims of today, minus maybe the Salafis, Al-Azhar signed an agreement with the Catholic Church. I can even put some of it on the screen if you want. It's literally a document called On Human Fraternity. And this document, which is a joint declaration of the Muslims of the East and West and all Catholics, basically upholds equal respect, equal dignity for Muslims and Christians. It condemns anything that is a threat to life. It condemns genocide, it condemns acts of violence. It condemns forced displacement. Anything that goes against these basic values, this document condemns. It says religion must never
does Al-Azhar represent the average Muslim?
Hostility or extremism, and this is from 2019.
Do they represent the average Muslim view?
Yeah, yes, they do. Al-Azhar is the highest.
So you think the average? You think the average? You think the Al-Azhar authorities who come together and sign this represent accurately the average Muslim view?
Yes, I do.
How do you make that? How do you come to that claim?
This is the historical and contemporary status of Al-Azhar.
How can you show me? How can you tell me that they actually accurately represent the average Muslim sentiments?
Al-Azhar is historically the longest enduring and most revered intellectual authority for Sunni Muslims, not Shi'i Muslims.
Okay,
Muslims.
That's not what I asked.
You're asking me how do you know that Al-Azhar represents the average Muslim view?
Yes,
So that's what I'm telling you.
This is not how you demonstrate.
Now, if you want poll data, you can go look up different Pew polls. Definitely, Muslims are not violent people. Most Muslims, according to poll data, are more peaceful than Christians, Jews, and atheists. If we go by poll data.
I actually published a survey before, which was primarily about what religious groups think about other religious groups. I think if you give me while you talk, if you give me a little bit of time, I will actually look that up and put the graph on here. You can see that Muslims are actually the most intolerant and the most the group that dislikes other religious groups the most. Specifically, they have a problem with Jews, which we all know they don't like Jews, and we also have a Pew research which clearly says
irrelevant. I want to talk about Cameron's tweet.
How is this irrelevant?
Because this doesn't speak to the tweet. I want you. So you're claiming that Muslims and Christians can't work together. I'm claiming that history supports his tweet and contemporary developments support the tweet. The problem is that you, AP, are completely oblivious, either willfully or out of ignorance, to all these historical and contemporary developments.
Are you telling me that throughout history? Okay, let me speak, please. Are you telling me that throughout history, Muslims were mostly respectful of Christian rights and that they treated Christians equally, that they collaborated? Is that what you're going to tell me?
Throughout medieval history?
Throughout Islamic history.
Yeah,
that's my question.
History, again, I'm going to answer your question. Okay, so first of all, I want to speak to today because we live in the 21st century.
You just said history, so let's go back to the history.
The last 10 years, are they part of history or not?
No, they're not. They're usually called.
They're not. Okay, well, in my books, the last 10 years are part of history. So
okay,
first
you made a claim. You talked about history. I want to ask you a very simple question. Do you want to claim that throughout history, Muslims have treated Christians as equal allies and protected their rights?
Now you just moved the goalpost, because I never made the claim throughout history that Muslims and Christians have had equal rights. I was talking about today. You said Muslims don't want to give Christians equal rights today. You were making a contemporary statement.
Didn't you just claim that historically that I am ignorant of how Muslims were historically to Christians? Isn't that what you just said?
Historically,
David,
again,
Cameron?
I don't know what. Maybe the connection is bad and you're not listening properly. The tweet that Cameron made. Can someone read the tweet again?
Okay, we know what the tweet says. I'm addressing what you just said.
Okay, so historically,
you just clearly told me historically. This is what you just said.
Historically, the tweet is correct. That's what I said. The tweet doesn't
Christians
say
and Muslims should work together to combat atheism.
Okay, very good. Muslims and Christians have done this already in history since at least the 800s.
Okay, so what you're saying is that only the part of Christians and Muslims working together to combat atheism, that part.
Okay. But that's what the tweet says.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to talk about,
that's a very strange objection to what is the problem here. The problem that I have and that others obviously have is not, no, you cannot come together and combat atheism. I'm pretty sure. I think that is possible, and lots of other people also think that is possible. That's not the objection that people have. The objection is, why in the world would you come together with Muslims to do that?
Because you've done that in history already.
It doesn't matter.
It has borne fruit. It has been a positive project historically. And the second issue that you bring up is about political situations and equal rights in the medieval and modern times. And despite Muslims and Christians, in a Christian medieval society, Muslims did not have equal rights. You surely know that. In a Muslim society, Christians did not have equal rights, but they still had second-class citizenship. They were still a free people. But in medieval Christendom, Muslims were not free. Muslims were serfs. Same with Jews. So comparatively speaking, in pre-modern society, Christians had a better status in a Muslim rule than Muslims in a Christian rule. Now,
I don't think there is a contest here. Under the classical
historical perspective, because in every empire, in any empire, the people who are not of the religion of the ruling regime, whether it's Christian or Muslim or Hindu, the people who are not of that religion are always of a lower societal status. That was the medieval norm.
We can establish that, and what we can establish here, what we can find here.
Despite that, if
you make claims here, I have to interject here and say something. You cannot just propagate such a ridiculous idea and then move on.
David, should you and I try to moderate
my claim?
No, I mean we all know the actual historical context here. Under Islam, historically speaking, according to Islamic law, to classical Islamic law, which everybody is aware of, Jews and Christians were treated as lesser people
No,
they were not. They were
of
subjugated.
Course they were free. Were they
slaves?
Were they slaves? Were they slaves? Can you answer yes or no?
Is that your understanding of freedom? Okay.
Second class citizenship is still second class.
Okay, yeah. Second class. Please don't interrupt me.
Now,
I'm trying to describe it. I am trying to describe
the status of Muslims in Christendom.
It's not a contest. I'm trying to describe it here.
Okay, but
in a Muslim environment,
be honest about that, right?
Can you please let me describe
what was the status of Muslims and Christians under an atheist regime like the Soviets?
That's not an atheist regime. That is a communist regime.
It is an atheist regime, and if you want to bring up, medieval Islamic law, I will bring up 20th century atheistic regimes, which have the worst record out of everybody.
That is not atheist ideology. That is communist ideology.
It's completely
you're making a very simple logical mistake here. On the one hand,
it's completely atheist.
Let me speak.
It's part of the atheist law that was practiced in China and the Soviet Union.
Khalil, let's let AP get some.
I'm muting you. You're being very rude here. Okay, so on the one hand, we have Islamic states, which are led by the ideology of Islam and impose Islam on the rest of society. And on the other hand, we have communist states who happen to be atheist because that is part of their communist ideology, and they impose communism upon society, and by communism, through communism, have a rule of law and thereby oppress people. So one is motivated by Islam, one is motivated by communism, not by atheism. There is no such ideology as atheism, which has certain tenets. You should be aware of this. You are a terrible professor here in this regard. I'm sorry. I'm unmuting you now. Okay, go ahead.
Atheism is the official worldview of the communist regime.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yes, it is.
It's not.
Yes, it is. Of course it is. You can't disagree.
You can go ahead and claim that. You can go ahead and claim that, but that is just
I will claim it because, well, one of us here is the professor, and it's not you.
Do you want me to pull actual professors who are actually experts in that topic and let them explain what the world
let me quote you a professor. Do you know who Kenneth Cragg is?
I don't know.
Okay, well, Kenneth Cragg is a Christian researcher of religions, and he's written an entire article about how the Soviet regime was atheistic, and in his own words,
does that mean that their ideology, which they were motivated by, is atheism? Is it atheism?
Yes, Marxism is atheist, my friend.
That's not how this works.
Of course,
atheism might be an aspect of Marxism. If what you're saying is true, if it were true that atheism is Marxism, that would mean that somebody who is an atheist is also necessarily a Marxist. So if I am an atheist, that would mean that I am also a Marxist or also a communist. Is that true? Okay. No, it is not. Because that is not how it works. It is idiotic.
Okay, very simple. Okay, then if that's what you're going to take, it's very simple. We don't live in medieval Islam anymore, and we don't have dhimmis anymore. So just because one is Muslim,
nothing to do with what we just discussed. Please,
of course,
your point.
Because you want to separate an economic governance policy from a worldview. So I can also separate the idea of dhimmis, which is a medieval governance tool. I can separate Dhimmitude from being Muslim, and that's why today
it is directly derived from the Quran.
No, it's not in the Quran.
It is directly taken from the Quran. That's where
it's not in. No, the medieval notion of dhimmi, where the dhimmi has a second-class status.
Okay.
That is not Quranic.
Okay, you are so you are telling me the scholars did not establish that based on primarily Quran chapter 9 verse 29.
No, because the idea
that is
let
that is
me
simply
explain.
factually wrong.
No, you're factually wrong, because
That
the
is factually wrong.
the earliest document we have about governance, political governance from the historical Muhammad is the Constitution of Medina.
Okay.
Now, in the Constitution of Medina, the word dhimma is used, but it doesn't mean second class. It just means protected. And it refers to the dhimma of God. It says how all these Jewish tribes and others who signed the Constitution are under the dhimma, or the protection of God. Then later on, after the Quran and Muhammad, the medieval Islamic jurists who are influenced by how other empires operate, you forget that the Byzantines and the Sasanians also had a second-class type of status for their subjects who are not of their religion. That's where the medieval notion of dhimmi comes from. So it is an interpretation that the Muslim jurists came up with for statecraft and governance, and that interpretation is not a necessary concomitant of Islam. You can have a Muslim governance state or whatever system which doesn't have dhimmis anymore, and that's why today there's no jizya today, and there's no dhimmis today, because Muslims are using a different model.
You're not addressing what I actually just said.
I just explained to you that dhimmitude is not a necessary concomitant of Islam. Dhimmitude comes from Byzantine and Sasanian law. No, but can you at least admit that the Sasanians and the Byzantines, who are two pre-Islamic empires, they already had second-class, what you call dhimmi status? Can you admit that that's where it's from?
This is not what we're talking about. You're distracting from the actual topic. What
then what you're saying is not your complaint is not about Islam. It's just about medieval statecraft. You should have a problem with every medieval empire then.
Why are you making what I said?
Let me jump in with something real quick.
No, just a second. What I said is that Islamic scholars have taken the dhimmi system and have based it primarily on Quran chapter 9 verse 29. This is historically known. Islamic scholars are aware of this.
They may quote a verse, but it doesn't come from the Quran.
Just give me a second. You might say it's developed further and was based on circumstantial issues. Okay, I agree with that. That's not what I'm arguing against. What I'm arguing is that Islamic scholars have primarily taken the idea from that very Quran verse and from Muhammad's treatment of others, and have then thereon developed this idea of dhimmitude. And you cannot deny this.
But I didn't deny that.
Okay,
what
David,
what these medieval Islamic scholars, what they developed is not exceptional in the medieval period, because every empire has this.
It doesn't matter if it's exceptional or not. We are not.
Okay, but then what you're saying, that if it's not exceptional, if you admit that a second-class citizenship status is not exceptional for a medieval empire, which it is not, then it's actually not unique or distinctive to Islam.
Nobody cares if it is unique or not. What matters is that
you said this is an essential part of Islam. This is a rule under Islam, but it's not.
Okay, does this is a rule of Islam mean only Islam has that?
It's not an essential rule of Islam. It's a legal interpretation.
Can you answer my question? Does this belongs to Islam mean that no other system has something like that?
But it's not. It doesn't belong to Islam.
Okay, you are not addressing the actual question. You just made a claim again.
Because I don't concede your point that this is essential to Islam.
Well,
you know what? What you're saying is these other empires have far worse treatment of religious minorities than Muslims.
You're putting
strange
words in my mouth. I'm telling you.
Because I want to go back to the tweet.
You again. Thank you. So, I will say one clarifying thing, David, and then you can talk.
But we don't have dhimmitude today.
Thank you. So I say very clearly, Islam has this issue. I have never said this is unique to Islam. You then coming out here and saying you are acting like, or you are claiming this is only unique to Islam is just deceptive. I never made such a claim. Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
But let's be clear. It's
I have to let David talk. Thank you, David. Go ahead.
There's no jizya or dhimmis today. It's a medieval Islam. Would you agree?
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so I didn't want to jump in because I want like three people arguing at once. But yeah, I just want to try and bring all of this together. One, political regimes generally try to make rules to keep whatever the dominant group is in power continuing to be in power. So it's pretty standard human nature for whether it's a tyrant or even if you have a democracy or something like that, people will say, okay, what is in the best interest of the dominant group, and we'll just historically people try to make rules like that. So that would be true of communists, Christians, Muslims, and so on. But AP and I would say, as far as atheism is concerned, like communism has the rule. As far as atheism is concerned, you wouldn't look at atheism and say, okay, it's a natural outgrowth of atheism that you should impose atheism, or that non-atheists should not be, or that non-atheists should be relegated to a different status in society or something like that. Likewise, you can have Christians who put other people in a second-class state in a society or something like that. But if you're just looking at Christianity, the teachings of the gospel, you wouldn't say, oh, this follows from Jesus' commands to whatever, therefore this is how a society runs. You don't get much of an idea of a political regime from Jesus or the apostles, because they weren't thinking about a political regime. But the point is, anyone, once they get in power, whatever group it happens to be, would tend to implement rules and laws and so on. They're going to, keep their status and so on. Our concern about Islam would be that it's built into the system. In other words, it's built into the system that you impose this as the law, and other people get subjugated. With that said, that's our view. But I have to qualify that, because we are interpreting Islam quite a bit through the lens of the Sunni Islam that we're constantly interacting with, and Sunni scholars, Sunni theologians, and so on, Sunni commentators, who are interpreting this as something that goes all the way back to the time of Muhammad and so on. So we're looking at this and saying this is built into Islam, because the commentators are basically tracing this all the way back to the time of Muhammad. Here was the situation with Muhammad in Mecca. Here was the situation later when he arrives in Medina. And by the end, that's when it's fight those who do not believe in Allah, until people are subjugated and people are second-class citizens and they feel themselves subdued, Jews and Christians and so on. So we're interpreting it through that lens. With that said, if Khalil does not agree with Ibn Kathir and all these other guys, which I'm sure he doesn't on a lot of issues, then he's not looking at it through the lens of later Sunni commentators and so on, whereas we are. So we're looking at that, and the people that we're predominantly interacting with today, as far as the people like Ali Dawa and so on, who are saying, if we get an Islamic state, AP is dead. Ex-Muslims are going to be executed. We're looking at it through that lens and saying, these are not guys who not guys who are looking for equality, and everyone's going to be in a it's when we look at the online Dawa guys, or a lot of the scholars, they're actively calling for situations where Asim al-Hakim, very popular Muslim scholar, he says the Muslim community should be building up strength until they can go door to door, knocking on the door, saying, convert to Islam, submit and pay the jizya, or you'll be executed. So it's not that we're saying all Muslims would agree with that, but that's primarily who the sort of groups we're interacting with. And so when we're interpreting Islam, we are looking at that. We're looking at that. And so it looks like this is something that is completely built into Islam. Our understanding of passages like 929 is viewed through that lens. So we're seeing this as, yes, there are human tendencies to subjugate other groups when you get into power and so on. But it doesn't seem to be built into necessarily other groups, but it is built into Islam. With that said, we do have a certain perspective on Islam, such that if a person did not share that perspective, if a person isn't, I don't know enough about Shia Islam or Ismaili Islam to be able to say what the interpretation of passages like this is. But I would agree. If you have different interpretations of certain texts, then you obviously wouldn't say that this comes from Islam. You would say, well, they got this idea from somewhere else later on, and then the scholars sort of read that back into their understanding of Islam, whereas that doesn't necessarily flow out of Islam. And so, anyway, so I'm fine. I'm fine getting back to the tweet, but
Yeah, the problem
Can
is
I-
basically that Khalil Andani is basically doing the gatekeeping for the majority Muslim population that has views that are unacceptable to all of us. While he comes here and just angrily discusses with us and presents an Islam that nobody in the world believes in, the majority of Muslims follow people like Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawa, or even Asim al-Haki, Mufti Menk, and so on.
Can you prove the majority? So what David said. So David, I'm glad that you inputted and said what you said, because that gives me a better sense of what you guys are responding to, right? So look, Asim al-Hakim, Ali Dawa, Muhammad Hijab, all of these people are Salafis or neo-Salafis. Let's at least get that on record. Okay, these are not mainstream Sunnis. You may think they are if you only live and operate exclusively on YouTube, but these people who you've cited are not mainstream Sunni Muslims. They're not. The Salafis, they're all Salafis.
People like the
Taliban?
No, people like Ibn Kathir and so on would be.
What are the Taliban?
Ibn Kathir does not. So the only reason why a lot of people know the name Ibn Kathir today
this is extremely deceptive. Khalil Andani, what is the Taliban? Are they Salafis too?
No, the Taliban are another extremist group, but they're not mainstream as Muslims either.
Okay, I'm asking you because you are saying that these people are Salafis. They don't
the
represent
people he
Muslims.
cited.
Okay, I'm asking you.
David cited are either full-blown Salafis or they are neo-Salafis.
Okay, what are the Taliban, for example? Tell me.
I'm not talking about the Taliban.
I'm asking you a question. What are the Taliban?
The Taliban are a movement that comes from the Deobandi movement, who were radicalized they were radicalized in these refugee camps in the aftermath of the U.S.-Soviet war in Afghanistan.
Okay,
the Taliban are the children of war.
What creed do they follow?
They are a Deobandi creed.
What are the Deobandi? Deobandi is just a movement. That's not a creed. What is the creed?
Deobandis are Sunnis of the South Asian area who have a certain set of distinctive positions that differentiate them from other Sunnis and Baralwis.
What madhab do they follow?
I think by madhab, if you had to count them under madhab, they would be technically Hanafi.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So they are Hanafis, which is, by the way, followed. It is the most popular.
I agree, but it doesn't just because the Taliban fall under a Hanafi umbrella, it doesn't mean the Taliban are the most popular. Come on, man. I want to get back to what
is that what I just said? Is not what I just said.
AP, you are very sneaky, my friend. I know your game, bro. I watch YouTube.
Khalil, why are you doing this? I said they are.
Why are you doing this?
I said
these cheap tricks may work with other people, my friend, but you're dealing with an actual professor here.
Stop doing this?
No, I'm not going to stand for your fallacies. Now, I want to get back to what
I will mute you. Thank you. So I asked specifically about the Taliban because the Taliban are Hanafis. They follow the Hanafi moral school, the jurisprudential school. And the Hanafi school also happens to be the largest school among Sunni Muslims, followed by the highest number of Muslims. And Khalil Andani is making it look like here that these are just extremist positions. But unfortunately, this is not true. I'm removing him for now because he's being so absolutely rude. He's being extremely deceptive. He's basically lying to the population here. Let me speak, please.
Maybe we should have
David. I'm muting all of you right now. I am speaking. This is my channel. He is making it look like this is only a Salafi issue. He's being extremely deceptive and sneaky here. It's not just a Salafi issue. Salafis are not the only ones who are extremists. Salafis are not the only ones who have all of these terrible rules. In fact, in Sunni Islam, and he is aware of this. He's specifically aware of this. He must be teaching about this. The four Sunni schools of jurisprudence are followed by the vast majority of Sunni Muslims, and Sunni Muslims make up more than 85% of Muslims around the world. According to all of those schools, followed by Muslims around the world, apostates are to be put to death, Christians and Jews are filthy disbelievers who do blasphemy and who do shirk and all of these things all the time. Nevertheless, they count as second-class citizens, so their rights are protected. All the others are probably not protected, but historically they somehow became protected citizens, and so on. Wife beating, child marriage, I don't know, killing people for adultery, homosexuality, this and that. All of this is part of their schools. The average Muslim may not know everything, but if you look into the books, the jurisprudential books of all of these 4 schools, and in addition to that, to the Salafi books, all of them agree on fundamental issues, which are: we are Muslims, we proudly suppress and, if necessary, fight and kill and execute and enslave the disbelievers. And this is a fact. If anybody wants to contest this, prove me wrong. Now you can come back on it.
Okay,
go ahead.
So,
no more deceptive stuff, and please don't interrupt people when they are talking, just as people don't interrupt you when you talk when you have your tangents.
The only person being deceptive in that rant was you, my friend.
Yeah, go ahead. Explain to me why.
Okay, well, firstly, we're going to go back to the topic. So David named a bunch of people. I'm responding to what he named. You want to talk about jurisprudence? That's a completely different issue. Because what you call extremism, which is what you described there, sex slavery and all this stuff, is what ISIS does. And by the way, just for the record, today, apart from ISIS, and we're not even sure about that, there is no Muslim state that has a dhimmi status for any of its population. And there's no Muslim state today that charges the traditional tax, jizya, on dhimmis. So to say, David, that the medieval idea of dhimmi as a second-class citizen is built into Islam is false, because you've conceded that it is a juristic interpretation that arose in the medieval times.
Khalil, do you know what this book is?
I don't know. It's a legal book of some sort.
Mukhtasar al-Quduri. You don't know what Mukhtasar al-Quduri is? Have you never heard of it?
No, I don't read
it. It is an extremely prominent book among Hanafi Muslims, one that Hanafi Muslims very often go to in order to understand their jurisprudential school.
Who is it written by and what time period?
Al-Baghdadi, 362 after Hijrah to 428 after Hijrah. Very prominent book in Hanafi, in the Hanafi school, and such books exist in all the other schools, and the Salafis have their own chain of books. And
everybody has fiqh books, but you said you were not going to interrupt. So
and this explains, well, if you're going to be deceptive, I'm just going to have to clarify this.
I'm not going to be deceptive. What I'm saying is that
explains fundamental Hanafi morals, and in here you can find all of the things that I just mentioned, including child marriage, including forcible marriage under certain circumstances, including stoning people, cutting off hands, killing apostates, and so on. This is not just some extremism or anything. This is a fundamental part of the vast majority of Muslims and what they believe in.
Okay, so something being in a fiqh book does not make it a tenet of the Muslim faith, number one. Number two, a rule could be in a medieval fiqh book, but all of these legal traditions that you've named are fluid traditions. And just because something is written in 300 Hijri, it doesn't mean that all Hanafis of today use that book and implement it in this very binary fashion, because that doesn't happen. So when you want to mention something like stoning, as if like this is a scare tactic that you're using. You want to make it seem to the Christian audience that their Muslim neighbors are just ready to stone somebody. But then you have to go read how the whole tradition actually implements, or in most cases fails to implement, something like stoning. Right? Now, I want to get back to the point. The point is
that's the issue here. The average Muslim
you won't let us talk to the point. The point is Cameron's tweet, and you want to talk about other issues.
Well, if you
would like to have a debate about warfare, we can have that debate.
Okay,
if you want to have a debate
throwing these You keep
about
throwing these
jihad,
weird
we
things,
can-
and then you
we
are
can have
surprised that
that
I actually
debate.
respond to them.
But in terms of
Okay,
today,
please let me moderate this. You come in here and you throw in these deceptive things, and then you are surprised that I respond to them, and then you want to get back to the topic,
but
and then you
won't.
accuse me
I
of
have
being.
not said anything deceptive. All my comments have been about Christians and Muslims. So
All
did
right.
I say
I
that
want to ask the
dhimmis
audience.
No.
I want to ask the audience here. Did I ever, when I mentioned stoning, imply that the average Muslim neighbor here wants to stone you? No.
You said all Muslims believe in this, so
Does
you're not using any
mean
nuance.
does that mean the average Muslim neighbor wants to stone you? No. Thank you. Now go ahead with the topic.
You said they all believe in this. You name a bunch of things, forced marriage, and you're like, they all believe in this. You should go poll.
Apparently you cannot
poll the
comprehend
average
very
Muslim
simple
and
sentences.
ask the average Muslim.
Oh, you want me to do that? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll go do research.
You think that children should be forced into marriage? Most will actually say no. They will not say yes. It doesn't matter what a fiqh book says or doesn't say.
I will go
By
to
the
stoning.
way, even fiqh, any fiqh in a fiqh book, the reason why it's called fiqh is because fiqh means understanding, and all fiqh is an interpretation of the time and the place. That's what makes it fiqh. That's why you have so many fiqh books which have different opinions, because all of these matters can be interpreted. Dhimmi status and jizya is part of this interpretation, which today Muslims don't implement. There's no Muslim state that has dhimmis or jizya. It just doesn't exist anymore. Similarly,
and why was it abolished?
Let me finish.
When was it abolished?
Offensive jihad today, according to Al-Azhar, is impermissible. It can't be done anymore.
And why not?
Because there's no caliphate.
And why not? Because there's no caliphate.
No, that's not the reason they give. No, that's not the reason they give.
That is the reason why it was abolished in the first. It was
abolished.
Not.
I'm telling you, if you let me finish, I will tell you. But you won't let me talk. You just love to interrupt people.
We all know the answer to this. Muslims will say the very same thing.
It's not. Al-Azhar doesn't say offensive jihad is impermissible because of a lack of a caliphate. Okay. That's not what they say.
And why do they say it is impermissible?
They say they gave two reasons. So the one reason they gave is that today in the modern world, Islam can be preached in non-Muslim lands. That was one reason. The second reason they gave is that today, unlike the past, Muslims have covenants with all these other groups. There are covenants, and there should be brotherhood between Muslims and non-Muslims. That's literally what they say. And for this reason, offensive jihad is impermissible today, and only defensive jihad is permissible. This is the fatwa that comes from Al-Azhar.
Okay.
And if you want the literal words of it, my colleague Javad read it out in a debate he had with someone else. Now, I want to get to the point.
You cannot just continue talking. What is this, man? He preaches something. He wants to take the word to the next thing and to the next thing without anyone ever responding. What kind of deceptive nonsense is this? This guy is not a this guy is a charlatan. It is very evident and very clear that this exists today. Al-Azhar comes together with their scholars today to make such an announcement because the caliphate was established by force of those people who are against the caliphate. This is why this is taking place today. I mean, are you dumb enough to come to that conclusion? Excuse me. Isn't this very, very obvious? There was a caliphate. As long as caliphates existed, they waged war against the world and did all of these terrible things to populations, offensive war, taking slaves, and so on. The caliphate was forcibly abolished by people who are against the existence of the caliphate. As a result of that, in our time, when no caliphate exists, Al-Azhar comes together and says, well, in today's time, we can go around preaching. Well, great. Thanks to those who abolished the caliphate. I think it was very simple, wasn't it now?
Yeah. Let me just go ahead and
I just want to go back to the main point of the
tweet. I agree. Maybe we should all wrap up our sort of final thought on this, and then even if we disagree, we can kind of move on. My thoughts on this are, as I mentioned, we're understanding Islam primarily through the people we interact with and the sources that they appeal to. So, when we look at someone like Ali Dawah, we don't think, oh, he's just using some medieval idea when he says that in an Islamic society, AP would be executed. He's not just coming out with that off the top of his head. He's not appealing to a fiqh book or something like that. He believes in standard Sunni Islamic sources like Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and so on, which say that if anyone leaves his Islamic religion, kill him. And so we're seeing all of this as connected. Again, if you reject those sources or something like that, yeah, you might be able to toss some of that out. You would still be stuck with the Quran. But we're reading the Quran and 929 and all of these passages that we quote. We're reading them through the lens of scholars who are interpreting them in a certain way. But notice, if you're talking about like Bukhari's, the command in Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and so on, these are not one particular madhab. This is standard Sunni Islamic belief. And so you're talking about 85 to 90% of Muslims in the world, regardless of what they happen to actually believe, or regardless of what they happen to live by, or what influences they've had on them, or what political system they live under, or what their leaders decide. As far as what their beliefs require allegiance to Muhammad's commands. And so if Muhammad commands that you kill apostates, or that you stone people for adultery and so on, we're taking that as standard part of Islam. And if a Muslim does not support that or promote that, great, we're happy for that Muslim. But we're still talking about what it's weird to say that that's not what Islam teaches from our perspective, because that's what's actually in the sources. And so
look directly on the screen here. You have the stats here
but
according
again,
to Pew Research.
This idea that
the number of people who want to implement the Sharia, and among those who want to implement the Sharia, you have, since we just mentioned it, we just talked about it, we have stoning here. I mean, look at stoning. Is this something that I just made up? Is this something very extreme? No. As far as we can see here, what Pew Research found by asking Muslims around the world, this is extremely common. This is not extremism. This is not some fantasy world where no Muslim ever believes in this. No, they say this is all right.
The fiqh books say that. The fiqh books say that, but stoning is a had punishment. You know what?
Okay, we're not talking about what the fiqh book says. We're talking about
because that's why they answer that way, because that's what medieval fiqh says. But the implementation of a had is something that rarely happens. That's part of the fiqh.
Here is the issue.
That the stoning penalty is barely ever applied.
Here is the issue.
Jonathan Brown,
in the real world, when you say,
Jonathan Brown has written an entire article on this. You can't take one piece of medieval fiqh and hold Muslims to that and ignore all the rest of medieval fiqh, which basically makes the whole thing almost inapplicable, right? That's not being fair. So if
I said Muslims should be executed in America,
the whole system, right?
If I said people who propagate Islam or who preach Islam should be executed in America, but you don't have to worry about that because it barely happens.
No,
do you think that makes sense?
It's not even that. It's actually part of the fiqh is to ward off these punishments.
All right, I can say, well, the law to punish and execute those who preach Islam exists in America, but we do our best not to apply it. We do our best to avoid the punishment whenever possible.
If you have a law that's on the books, but the part of the implementation of the law is that it's rarely applied, then they're just
as horrible.
What's in the fiqh books. Now, I don't agree with this personally. It's not part of my law, right? But we have to take into account the actual application of these laws, especially when it's a medieval law. So the idea that an apostate should be killed, it was not taught by the historical Muhammad. Ghazali is the first person to actually codify this idea, and Ghazali dies in the year 1111. Frank Griffel has written an entire article about this.
It's in Bukhari.
David, do you want to jump in here?
It may be in Bukhari, but the actual person who turned it into a rule that has to be applied in any sense, Ghazali is the first one to come up with this.
No, and there's no way that's correct. I mean, you find it in Tabari. We find it in the Muslim sources where they're actually executing apostates.
The hadith may be there. Of course, the hadith itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So number one, the hadith is not historical. It didn't come from the historical Muhammad. This is
according to you. Well,
yeah, by the way, Khalil,
according to the historians of Islam.
Khalil, I just wanted to agree with you. So notice, and matter of fact, this might be a good opportunity to get back to the tweet, because you do have these things in the hadith, and so yes, I will grant that if you're throwing out those sources, because you don't have any sort of clear command, kill apostates in the Quran. You have
the opposite. The Quran says there are people who believe in the morning, they disbelieve in the evening, and then they believe again in the morning, and they disbelieve again. The Quran clearly talks about people who we would legally call apostates, and nothing happens to them. So there's no Quranic punishment for this.
So we have, but the thing is, you have in the Quran commands to obey Muhammad's decisions, and
I agree,
in the Hadith, so in the Hadith, if you're saying that doesn't go back to the historical Muhammad, it's the same thing with the Aisha issue. If you're throwing out these sources, yes, we don't have a lot.
So that's one point. Okay, so that's one point that the Hadith.
Can you please stop interrupting people when they're talking?
I'm responding to him. He just
you are interrupting when he's speaking. You're trying to interrupt him so many times. You did the same thing with me, and then you blame it on me. Please stop doing that. You are a professor. You should know this better.
To him. You're interrupting. Okay.
We should probably give Cameron some.
Yeah, let me pause. Cameron, you've been just waiting to come in, and we haven't let you. So go.
Yeah, you see this mess you've caused, Cameron?
I do want to. I do think we should go back to the actual tweet, because these are all other issues.
Yeah, I wanted actually to try to understand what the problem is that you guys are laying out, and then see what the implications are. So it sounds like you're saying that Muslim, in the majority of Muslims, so like if Islam or Muslims were to sort of be, I guess, dominant, then they wouldn't allow Christians to have the same rights and everything, and they would also persecute them. And so that's a reason why Christians and Muslims should not work together to combat atheism. Is that the gist?
My thought was your tweet sounded like a sort of blanket statement, like ultimate team up. Christians, Muslims, stop disagreeing with each other and focus on dealing with atheists. Yeah, that was my interpretation. If, as I point out, if you were simply saying, like, if you wanted to say, and matter of fact, you could even clarify that, and I would agree completely. If you said something like, since Christians and Muslims agree on, let's say, for example, the existence of God, and agree upon certain arguments, we could be united in sharing those arguments, in responding to atheists. I mean, you could even take it further. You could say, hey, since Christians and Muslims agree on the existence of God and creation, and that God sent prophets and revelation, and that Jesus is born of a virgin and performed miracles and so on. And since we all agree on those, we could, because I said for years, if I'm standing in a room with an atheist and a Muslim, who do I agree with? Well, it kind of depends on the topic. If it's whether Muhammad's a prophet, I mean, I'm going to be in agreement with the atheist. We'll both agree for completely different reasons, but we're going to agree that he's not a prophet. If the question is, was the universe created or does God exist? I'm actually going to agree with the Muslim. And depending on his arguments, like I'm not going to agree with a flawed argument from a Christian or a Muslim. But if he gives an argument that I agree with, my goodness, I agree with his argument. And you don't just see this, with individuals today, because I've actually experienced this. When Nabil and I were arguing about the resurrection one day, we actually started arguing with my wife, who is an agnostic, and we both sort of started arguing with her. We were on the same page on certain things against the agnostic. But so you see it like today, but you also you can see it historically. You can see it with like popular arguments, like the Kalam cosmological argument. That was like a heretical Christian came up with part of it. It was namely arguing that the universe isn't eternal. And then Muslim philosophers take it and they say, okay, the universe, hasn't existed for all eternity, had a beginning. Well, it must have a cause. And so they take it. And then you got, William Lane Craig today, and let me add some science and some mathematics to it and so on. So you've got this argument that people have been working on for well over 1,000 years and stuff, and it's going back and forth and being used by different groups, but the groups would agree on, hey, make this argument as good as it can be. And if a Muslim came out with a knockdown, perfect, awesome argument from design or from morality or whatever it happens to be, I'm not going to say I disagree with the argument because he's a Muslim. I would agree with the argument. And so I have no problem. I have zero problem with Christians and Muslims who happen to agree on something, agreeing on it, announcing to the world that they agree on it, and announcing that they agree against the people who reject it. So it's a parallel to AP and I happen to agree on a lot of things. We disagree on other things, but on the issues we agree on, we're happy to agree. So yeah, it was a little bit of rewording. I wouldn't have any problem.
Yeah. So you basically agree with me. So AP though, I think your objection to me seems utterly disconnected from what my tweet was about. So your concern is that if Muslims were in power, then they would persecute Christians, right? And it's probably not just Christians, right? It'd be Jews, it'd be other people that you think would be persecuted.
Well, it's more than that. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, to me, it just seems.
Let me state, AP, just because I would imagine we sort of, because once Cameron clarifies what he's actually saying, we probably read that tweet in the same way, like almost along the lines of Christians and Muslims stop arguing about stuff. You've got a different group that you should be worrying about more, and it's atheists. So since we're on the same page as people who believe in God, you need to focus on that. And at that point, it's like, wait a minute, why am I going to stop arguing with the Ali Dawas and the Muhammad Hijabs of the world and start focusing on refuting Richard Dawkins or something like that? To us, it's like, what are you talking about? We're being bombarded by, death threats, and we're going to rape your wife and all this stuff. And it's like, you want us to stop responding to these guys and their
well,
stuff?
I want to make it very simple, David. I mean, what you said is largely true, but so in my head, it is just, I actually wanted to respond differently to what Cameron said. I wanted to say, atheists want to coexist with you and be equal to you, and you happen to not like their ideas. Muslims want to kill you. That's what I wanted to say. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Yeah.
Muslims want to kill Cameron?
No, I mean,
Muslims want to kill who? Christians?
Want to kill those who oppose Islam, want to kill those who leave Islam, want to kill those who cause problems, want to
so Muslims want to kill Christians.
want to have a society in which
again I want to
and so on. That is basically the gist of it. Yeah.
No, but hold on. I mean, that's quite a statement. Now you're attributing like murderous intent to Muslims in general.
Not in general. I wouldn't say in general.
Well, you said Muslims.
I would say
talking about?
I would say the representatives of Islam would ultimately want to create a society where, Islam rules. Things are ruled by Islam, under which the ideology necessarily leads to the oppression of others, including apostates and blasphemers, and all those who oppose this system.
Would Cameron? Okay, why don't we check this? So let's go back to a caliphate where Muslims ruled and where some form of Islamic law was a law of the land and where Christians were dhimmis. Should we just go back in time? Okay. I want to show a slide. This is actually from my class. I'm not like, this is what I show my class. How do I screen share here?
You go on
there's some probably present, but obvious. Something that says present.
Okay. All right. I'm going to show a slide. This is literally what I teach classes. I'm going to show you. We're going to go back in time. We'll check. Okay. Can you see this? I think you have to bring it up. Okay. So if we go to the Abbasid period, this is in the 800s. Would you agree? Abbasids are a Muslim caliphate.
Yeah.
This is when a lot of Islamic law is being developed. Mm-hmm. The Hadith are written during the 800s as well. Okay. So I want to give you two examples of this is just history. This is what happened. So the first example is under the Abbasids, that they commissioned a translation of a whole bunch of Greek, Persian, Indian, scientific, philosophical writings into Arabic. You guys know that. Now, it's worth noting that this translation was done in collaboration with Christian clergy. And we even have the names of some of these people. Patriarch Timothy, he was a Nestorian Christian. He was part of the translation movement. He was paid and he worked with the Abbasids. Theodore Abu Qura, a Christian scholar, also doing the translation, paid, welcome member of the Abbasid court, treated really well. I'll even show you examples. Hunayn ibn Ishaq was a Christian, the physician of the Abbasid Caliph. This is a proto-Sunni caliphate. So they're all part of the translation movement. And for those who don't know, the translation team is a mixed team of Christians and Muslims, and the Muslim leader of the team was Al-Kindi. That's point number one. The second point, which is in relation to this, again, we're just going back in time. How were these Christians treated? Okay, like what was their status? So this guy, Theodore Abu Kurai, dies in 816. Okay, he's a bishop. This guy, and you can Google this, this guy wrote against Islam. Theodore Abu Qurra wrote against Islam. You can read, like, he critiques Prophet Muhammad, he critiques Islamic monotheism, he preaches the Trinity, okay? These are some of the things he says. This is like what he says, okay, when he's refuting Islam. He criticizes Muhammad for having no miracle, all that. He talks about Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Now, let's check. How was he treated? Did the Muslim caliph and the courtiers of the caliph beat the crap out of this guy for criticizing Islam? What do you guys think? Let's check.
Entirely irrelevant to the actual issue.
No. Let me finish. These are quotes from an academic article by Sidney Griffith. He's an expert in this. These are all quotes about how Theodore Abu Qurra was treated by the Abbasid Caliph Al-Ma'mun. Look, when people...
completely irrelevant. I want to add something. I want to add something for clarification.
I'm not done. Let me just finish.
Okay, I want to add something for clarification here. Okay, I want to add something. We are all aware, and I said this before. I made videos about this issue. I made live streams about this issue. That under an Islamic state, in the dhimmi system, Christians and Jews would exist and even have their places of worship and have probably their neighborhoods. That's how it's developed in history. They would have the Christian neighborhoods or the Jewish neighborhoods, and that's where usually all the stuff happens that is not allowed among Muslims. But the issue is their rights would be limited to practicing their religion within their own spaces, and they wouldn't really have a say in society. So you could say that a priest, for example, is allowed to preach Christianity to his own audience, but could the priest go out into the streets and openly share his opinions to the public and invite people to leave Islam, people to leave Islam, the Muslims to leave Islam?
Can you see what's on the slide?
This
priest preached at the Abbasid court in front of the public. He preached against Islam, and he preached for Christianity, and he debated other Muslims, and he often won debates. And even when some small group of Muslims wanted to do something to him, the Muslim caliph protected him. That's what it says on here.
Okay. So, is the court the general population?
The court represents the elite of the Abbasid society.
So it's not the general population. So we are not talking about somebody.
So all the tribal leaders of a society would be at the court. We don't have back in the day this Times Square type thing. But the Abbasid court is the highest level of social interaction in Abbasid society. So if you can preach, imagine this is a Sunni caliph, and a Christian priest comes and attacks Islam and preaches the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit in front of the entire court elite, and he's freely allowed to do that.
All right, but that's not the issue, though. The issue is I'm asking you very clearly. Let me ask you this: in the average Islamic society under the dhimmi system, I mean, you have the rules outlined. You should be aware of this.
The rules are here, though.
If Christians went out there among the general population, and began telling the people that they should leave Islam because Islam is obviously false, and Muhammad is a false prophet, and Allah is a lie, and the Quran is full of mistakes and full of lies, and so on, would this normally be completely allowed under an Islamic system?
Yeah, let's see. So this is an article about this period, about 800s and 900s Abbasid society. This is Baghdad, the capital of the caliphate. This is not some outskirts. So look what Professor Dorrell says. Despite their clearly inferior social status, dhimmis, religious minorities in this and many other periods of Islamic history enjoyed a wide intellectual freedom in society's upper classes, where interreligious arguments based solely on appeals to philosophical reason were a common feature of Islamic intellectual life. This formed the setting of the Kalam debates, quote, these conversations or debate sessions termed majlis or munazara were notable for the presence of representative of every conceivable worldview available of the time, including Christians, Jews, Muslims, Zoroastrians, naturalists, philosophers, and even skeptics or atheists. So apostate prophet, you would have been invited to these gatherings. As Sidney Griffith points out, quote, outright persecution of Christians was the exception rather than the rule. Christians, quote, were not normally subject to outright persecution in the world of Islam simply by reason of being Christian.
So we are making a distinction here and specifically addressing, we are talking here about a society of debate in the upper classes and in the court of the Abbasids. It's also very interesting that we go to a very specific time frame here in order to.
No, he says other periods. It doesn't just say one time frame. It says other. Do you read that? It says other periods of Islamic history.
But we are. I'm asking you a very, very clear question. So, if Christians or other
couldn't we find examples of Christians being persecuted like in other time periods, other places?
Oh,
it seems like it's pointing to one period.
You can, but the general. So if persecution only, so what it says here is, yes, societally, the Christians and Jews in a medieval Islamic society had inferior social status. I'm not arguing against that, but this persecution of Christians was not a regular thing. That doesn't mean that it never happened. Of course it happened. Just like Christian empires persecuted Jews and Muslims, right?
Hey, can you tell us what the Pact of Umar is?
The Pact of Umar is a sort of a covenant or list of rules or rights that religious minorities would have under a medieval Islamic rule.
Can you tell us some of the restrictions or some of the suppressions that are part of that Pact of Umar?
This is not my point. Here's my point. My point is that when you had, because AP, you made a statement. You said, oh, and David was asking about this. Well, if Muslims were ruling, this type of collaboration wouldn't happen. It's quite the opposite. In this Muslim society, in the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate and other caliphates, there's also the Fatimid Caliphate had this too. In these societies, although Christians had inferior societal social status, they still were free to debate their religion with Muslims. And
Khalil, I asked you a question though. Can you tell us what the Pact of Umar said?
This is not the point. See, the Pact of Umar can say whatever it says, but when we look into real history, what we find is that Christians and Muslims are able to collaborate even in medieval Islamic society.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're giving us sources of a specific time period in which it is said that there were debates in the court of the Abbasids and in the upper classes.
Yeah.
But we want to entirely disregard the most probably the most popularly known document of an example of the Sharia applied to dhimmis under an Islamic state, a precedent for the dhimmi system for centuries under different Islamic states, the Pact of Umar.
This says many other periods of Islamic history. It says that. Are you telling me that?
All right. These are entirely different things. I'm specifically asking you a question.
But this is the Sharia, my friend. This is the Sharia in practice. This is what you're scared of. It's right here.
I'm not scared of this. I'm admitting this right now to your face.
It's right here.
I'm asking you a question.
Are you saying the Abbasids didn't follow the Sharia?
I do. Do you really want to just focus on one thing here? Cherry pick this and just go with that? I'm asking you a question. Why can't we just go to it? We are talking about how Muslims treated non-Muslims, right?
But
so if we want to go to that, if we want to
why
go
does it
to
even
that,
matter?
It's not.
Which society? Can you tell me which caliphate used the Pact of Umar?
Which caliphate? It was the Umayyad Caliphate under. It is thought that it was Umar II, I believe, right? And it is thought to be from that period, and it is also thought that most of the application of the dhimmi system throughout Islamic history is very much based on the outlines presented here, which is why I'm asking you, what does the Pact of Umar say?
The Pact of Umar is, firstly, it's not by Umar. It's a falsely ascribed document, and it was not the governing document for most Islamic societies.
Can you tell us what it said? Can you give us a few points about the treatment?
My friend, it's not relevant to what we're talking about. The Pact of Umar is not the governing document for medieval Islamic society. It's not.
So if you want to have a very simple source, if you just want to look into this on a very surface level. You can just go and Google Pact of Umar, and you have a source as simple as Wikipedia. It is that accessible. It
doesn't matter. This is not the legal code of the Abbasids or the Ottomans or the Mamluks. They don't use the Pact of Umar. Why do you keep bringing it up? It's an Umayyad era document.
Because it is a precedent for the Dhimmi system applied by the Umayyad Caliphate. Which is,
but it wasn't even widely adopted by the Umayyad Caliphate to begin with.
Then why do you not want to tell me the things that it said?
Because it's not. I'm making a point about how was this Islamic dhimmi system actually applied to Christians in real history. I've showed you that Christians are not persecuted. I'm bringing up a document that's not used.
Let me jump in with something.
Can you just answer my question? I'm just curious. Can you just tell me what a few of the things that the document said?
By the way, where do you get that it's from the Umayyad era? It's attributed to an Umayyad. It is thought to
be from the Umayyad era. That is what the scholar.
Okay, no. When is it actually? Because from what I recall, the Pact of Umar is a 9th century document, and the Umayyad Empire ended in the 8th century, so it postdates the Umayyads.
Well, there are disputes because some Muslims thought that was actually Umar, right? So
but
you're going to get different perspectives.
See, this is the problem here. So I'm trying to say that, look, when Muslims are actually ruling, even when Christians are dhimmis, the Christians are able to talk about the religion, preach it, and collaborate with the Muslims. We know this collaboration happened. It's a fact. That's how all this stuff was translated from Greek to Arabic. It's because they had Christians working for them. The Christians are debating the Muslims, and they're learning theology from one another. People don't know this, but the whole Muslim kalam idea of God having eternal attributes that are distinct from him but not separate from him. Where did the Muslims get this? A lot of people think they got it from the Christians because they were reading Christian writings. So the point is that Cameron's tweet, from a medieval perspective, is correct. And if we go now to the 21st century, his tweet is even more correct because the Catholic Church and Al-Azhar signed a 2019 document that basically says we are united on the idea that there's a creator who created the world.
Thank you, Bobo Ewan, for this wonderful super chat. I really appreciate it. David, go ahead.
I just wanted to... two things. One, back to the tweet, because John McRae had a comment earlier on suggesting that Cameron has been deceiving us this entire live stream. So that's important to check out. But as far as the discussion that's been going on up until now, there's a parallel in the sense, you guys brought up communism earlier. If you said, like if Cameron had said, hey, we should work together with, let's say, communists or something like that. I'm not saying they're parallel. This is an example of what something might sound like. If Cameron had said, hey, we should be working on we should be partnering with communists to deal with something where we have some sort of common ground. Lots of us would be like, communists? What in the world? Look at what has happened to Christians, in communist countries. And Khalil's response kind of sounds like, oh, but look, right here during this time period, there was, communist leaders were totally fine with Christians and didn't bother them at all. Bother them at all. I'd be like, okay, but yeah, you could find examples of that, but it still doesn't mean I want communism ruling me, because best case scenario would be like a gamble, like which communism are we getting? Are we getting the communism where religion has to be crushed because it's what stands in the way of the development or something like that? Or are we getting like a friendlier version? And so when you're talking about, like, if Islam were to take over, well, what would it be? Is it Khalil's idea about Islam? Is it Ali Dawa's? It's like, I'd rather just not have any of it taking over. With that said, so anyway, that's how the discussion kind of sounds. But with that said, I mean, Cameron's message has nothing to do with Islam taking over or something like that. Cameron's message isn't about we're going to be politically ruled by some group. He's thinking in terms of like debates and discussions and so on, that Christians and Muslims should be on the same page. But Cameron earlier was saying, once he's clarified it, it's something that I don't have any problem with, and I would actually agree that Christians and Muslims as individuals who have common interests and some shared beliefs could totally be on the same page. Again, that's happened in my life. In fact, I mean, I'll say this early on, when I was in college and my best friend is a Muslim, I kind of viewed us as like, you know, we're more on the same page than either one of us would be with atheists. It was kind of like, you know, a million death threats later that I was like, no, I kind of have a problem with Islam here, not just with certain individuals. But John McCrae, when I said how I initially interpreted Cameron's tweet, namely that, hey, Christians and Muslims should stop disagreeing with each other and we should instead, you know, unite and focus on dealing with atheism. John McCrae, what do you mean? Said, that's exactly what Cameron meant. Lol. He says, you implied that in your response to me. So I actually went over and checked out Cam's response because I want to get to the bottom of this. So Cameron said, by the way, Christians and Muslims should work together to combat atheism. And then John McCrae said, no one even cares about atheism today. I think John's definitely wrong about that.
Let's get there.
He says, no one even cares about atheism today. How is atheism even a threat today? Also, atheists don't have nearly as many people who think that Christians should be killed for their beliefs. Super L, take my dude. And then Cameron replies, atheism isn't much of a global threat statistically, but it's nevertheless a serious intellectual threat. Talking here of academic atheism, not online atheism. Just because atheism isn't a big global threat doesn't mean it's not worthy of engaging and responding to. So I guess John is saying, no, it does sound like you're saying Christians and Muslims, like as a group, should unite to go after atheism, but I don't know.
But then my question is, what is the point?
Yeah, John is confused.
What is the point?
Take that, John. We got all sorts of wars brewing. We're gonna
John, you have no idea
what
what
is
you're
the
talking
point?
about.
Why do you want to collaborate with Muslims against atheism? So what exactly is the point of the collaboration, and what exactly is the point of combating atheism, and then taking it so seriously that you want to have such a collaboration?
Good question. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning of the stream, which is that my ministry, Capturing Christianity, I defend mere Christianity. And part of mere Christianity is defending theism. So I want to, as a Christian, spread theism. I mean, that's a logical concomitant of Christianity. So, and theism is something that Muslims and Christians have in common. And so my thought was, I mean, there's a lot of infighting that I see between Christians and Muslims online. And so I thought, as a change of pace, it'd be fun as an intellectual sort of thing for Christians and Muslims to work together to respond to some atheistic arguments, or maybe even forward arguments for the existence of God, work together in that way. I was not trying to imply that Christians and Muslims should stop arguing about what's true theologically. I never meant to imply that. I guess, kind of see how people thought that was implied. That's not what I meant, but that was the idea behind my tweet. AP, I actually wanted to ask you something.
Go on.
I mean, it sounded like the reason that you gave is that if Muslims do become the sort of global power, then the concern is that Christians, atheists, people that are not Muslims are going to be persecuted. And so that's why we shouldn't necessarily partner with them to combat atheism. So let me just ask you this. I was wondering, how far in your mind does that go? So like, suppose that I said Christians and Muslims should work together to combat world hunger. Would you say, don't work with the Muslim because, hey, if they get in power, they're going to persecute Christians? Or would you be okay with Christians and Muslims working together to like feed children?
No, I would be completely okay with that, but I think that would be so the comparison is we're comparing different things here, because when we talk about,
well, yeah, I'm asking how far would you go?
How far would I go in?
He's asking what would it be okay for Christians and Muslims to be in agreement.
See, that's a strange question. I mean, you could, of course, come together and work together in terms of humanitarian issues. You could come together if there is a serious Muslim population and a serious Christian population, come together and work on, creating an environment, a society that works for both of them. But that is the whole issue. The point of collaborating with Muslims, or Christians and Muslims coming together to collaborate to combat atheism. That just seems like it is something that comes out of the blue, and it becomes problematic because we are specifically talking about an intellectual fight here of atheism. And when you come to the intellectual fight here and the fight between certain beliefs or the lack thereof, you have on the one hand the Christians who, I mean, we see how Christians perform in the world right now with other religious groups, and then you have Muslims, and the general attitude that you get from Muslims is not a very respectful one. Is that Christians are, I don't know, extremely deluded, engaging in polytheism, dirty often is the usage, and so on. So I simply do not understand the point of focusing just on atheism and then going so far and having an intellectual collaboration between Muslims and Christians. I don't understand the point.
Yeah. So my goal is to.
Sorry. Go ahead.
My goal is to. I mean, I'm very open about this. I'm a Christian. I want to make more Christians. I want people to believe in Christianity and be saved. And so I was thinking of an analogy that might help. So like, suppose that there's this neighborhood, okay, and Christians live on one side of the street, Muslims live on the other side of the street. Atheists are sort of walking, or they exist on the outside of this neighborhood, okay? And so Christians, the idea would be that Christians and Muslims could come out of their houses, walk to the end of the neighborhood, and try to convince atheists to, hey, at least come be with us on the street. Like, you may not go directly into, the Christian side or the Muslim side or whatever side, but you can at least like come and join us on the street here. And then you can decide at that point what you want to do, if you want to become a Christian or a Muslim. And then at that point, there's going to be additional people coming out of the houses. They're going to be like, no, you need to come to the Christian side. And then there's going to be Muslims saying you need to come to the Muslim side. And then I kind of let those debates happen. But I'm saying I'm going to go partner with the Muslims, not just with Muslims, but I'm going to go partner with other people that have these sort of same goals to get them into our houses. And so that's kind of the idea.
Okay, so here is the issue that I actually have with it, and that I initially thought of when I saw the tweet. I'm just getting back now to how I internally reacted to that when I first read it. So what it looks like is you see a problem with atheism, intellectually speaking. You want to combat atheism because you consider it a global, intellectual threat. And in order to combat the threat of atheism, which you take very seriously, you then go and collaborate with Muslims, with Islam, who are also an intellectual opponent of yours. What it looks like to me, and I think to many other people, is you see Islam on one hand, which is an opponent, clearly, because Muslims are out there trying to convert you and saying learn more about Islam, convert to Islam, Christianity is wrong, and so on. On the other hand, you see atheists, and you decide, well, we have the two of these. Atheism is the bigger problem. Islam is the lesser evil, which is why I will come together with the Muslims and combat atheism. So that's what it looks like to me.
That's how your tweet looked to a lot of people. And I'm sure that would be. Yeah. It's like this is the bigger issue.
And what makes me think, why in the world would you consider atheism such a big problem compared to Islam, that you would consider Islam a lesser evil and come together with them to combat atheism, when atheism is in reality not that big of an issue as an opponent to you as Islam is?
I just wanted to add really quickly, and then sorry to interrupt, Kim.
Hurry up, super genius.
It didn't actually. I could have waited until the end, but I'd already jumped in, so I was like committed. But I think a lot of this has to do with who you're primarily interacting with on some level. If you're constantly having discussions and arguments with atheists, and you're posting stuff that has to deal with atheists, a lot of the negative feedback you're going to get is from atheists. You're not going to be getting tons of disagreement from Muslims because they're actually going to agree with a lot of what you're saying. And so if you're thinking, what do I want to focus on? It'll probably be the atheists who are sending you nasty comments about, oh, you got to have your sky daddy, right? And so you'd be thinking in terms of that. If you're primarily interacting with Muslims, you'll have, I mean, if you're a Christian and you're criticizing Islam, you'll actually have lots of atheists who are on the same page as you. You'll still get the comments from atheists going, oh, you're arguing with a Muslim. It's, oh, my sky daddy's bigger than your sky daddy, lol. You'll still get that, but you'll have lots of atheists who are cheering you on because they want you to refute. Islam. So you won't tend to view atheists as much of a problem because of who you're interacting with. Same thing, like there are people who they're mainly concerned about like LGBTQ stuff and transing kids and so on. If people are going after that issue, then the people they're going to catch a backlash from are people who are supporting the transing of kids and stuff, and so they're going to be blasting it. You're going to think like this is the main group I'm going to be disagreeing with, and Muslims and Christians might be cheering for you because they might agree with you about that we shouldn't be transing kids or something like that. And so it seems like whoever you're interacting with, the main negative response you're going to get is from that group that you're criticizing, and you're just going to have a more negative reaction towards that group. And other groups, even though if you were disagreeing with them, they might be flipping out on you too, but they're not. And so you might think, oh, that's the group that I have to worry about, or that's the ideology that I have to worry about. And at the end of the day, it's just there are tons of groups out there. We disagree on all kinds of things. We're limited in terms of time and so on. So and you can't criticize everything and be good at it. So you generally have a couple of positions that you could be interacting with, and yeah. So I get you saying, hey, if Christians and Muslims are on the same page here, then yeah, why wouldn't we be dealing with atheists or something like that? And I would basically understand any position where people are interacting, thinking, that's the group I need to we should be dealing with. But it's like,
so it's basically Cameron, the Dizzle, and Khalil against AP.
But here's no, because I also agree. I also agree with AP that if I'm sitting there, the way you send your tweet out, Christians and Muslims should unite against atheists. I'd be thinking like AP. It's like, well, what am I more concerned about? I have to say, I don't view atheism as a tremendous threat. I can see why you, at an ideological level, is a big concern, especially since atheism has been growing pretty rapidly. I've even seen Muslim scholars warning about underground atheists in Muslim countries, that there are actually a bunch of closet atheists in Muslim countries. So I understand being concerned there. I don't think. Let me put it this way, and then it's pretty much all I'd have to say on this issue.
You talk too much.
I think atheism has become a much bigger issue because over the past couple decades, after things like 9/11 and so on, lots of atheists, speaking not the laid back atheists that were around before, but like the more aggressive new atheist type, they got a lot of momentum saying religion is bad and religion is dumb. So right after, look at 9/11, look what religion leads to. Look at Westboro Baptist Church, see what religion leads to. That's why we need to abandon religion, become atheists, and then we'll all be, then society will be way smarter and way better, and we could get past this religion stuff. Well, guess what? You had a ton of people become atheists, and they had a ton of momentum, and they're running around college campuses and starting atheist groups and even atheist churches and stuff like that. And then everyone starts losing their mind, right? And you start ending up with all these dumb positions in society. So I think they're going to atheists are going to kind of lose that moral high ground that they seized after, just kind of recently. Because here's the thing. Atheism isn't a very as it is in itself, just atheism by itself, not combined with something, isn't a very, like evangelistic type ideology. Like I have to get all the people in the world on the same page as me because this is so important. Christians can be like that because, hey, Muslims can be like that. These are matters of like eternal significance. If you're an atheist, it's like, if you're an actual atheist, like, what do you care? What?
I want to say to that. I mean, the average atheist out there, in terms of belief, the main concern of the average atheist right now is just let me be an atheist. Just leave me alone.
Yeah. So, and by the way, AP, that was like standard atheism before the rise of the new atheists. Most atheists were like, I don't care what other people believe, but I don't need your crutch and stuff like that. But I don't really care what other people believe. If you believe in Jesus and that makes you happy, go for it. I don't care. That's what atheism was like. And then you got the more aggressive types. No, everyone has to be ridiculed into seeing things our way. And so they got that momentum, but I think they're going to lose that momentum. And I think atheism over time is going to go back to hey, as long as it's not negatively, horribly affecting me, because that's what it became, right? Hey, as long as other people aren't messing with us or killing us or something like that, who cares what they believe? And then it became, you see 9/11, the religious people are going to kill us all unless we radically transform society right now. And I think they're going to lose that momentum, and then it's going to go back into a calmer kind of atheism. You still want to respond to it because atheism is dumb no matter what.
You're right. No, you're not right about that. But you're right that.
No, AP just said I'm right when I said I said atheism is dumb. AP said I'm right.
Maybe it is dumb. I don't know. But so the issue is most atheists out there are not people who want to go out there and proselytize and tell people, hey, why do you believe in religion? Stop it. God is dumb. You shouldn't believe in this anymore, and so on. So most atheists don't even care. Most atheists just live their life. Most atheists don't want to be ruled by religion and don't want religion to mix into their lives. Don't want religion to have a say in their lives. Of course, there are lots of atheists online nowadays who want to share all those wild ideas they have and want to say, all the stuff that you preach in church is actually wrong. All the stuff that you say in the mosque is wrong, and so on. But so the primary idea of many atheists, the primary sentiment is, I just want to live and I don't want religion to impose certain things on me. And here is still the issue, and I still kind of want to get an answer to this from Cameron. Whereas the average atheist just says, I simply want to be equal to you and I don't want religion to rule over me. The average Muslim actually is a threat to your beliefs, and actually wants you to leave your beliefs and wants you to become a Muslim. I mean, this is a fundamental Muslim idea that they are, wherever they are, they're supposed to share their beliefs and convince you that their own religion is true. Which is why when Muslims are invited, for example, we had the recent incident of Mohammed Hijab being invited to Jordan Peterson, who just wanted to understand Islam and understand how we can work together better. And Mohammed Hijab, supported by most of his audience, immediately took the opportunity to preach Islam to Jordan Peterson, and their primary goal was to convert Jordan Peterson to Islam. And this is usually the motive here. The motive is usually to change your beliefs as well. So the question that I still have here, that I think is very important, is why do you consider Islam the lesser evil? Why do you think it is so important for Muslims and Christians, who actually don't have that much in common, especially when it comes to theology, come together and to combat atheism? What makes atheism so bad? Why is atheism such a threat?
So I in that follow-up tweet that I made to John, I said that it was like an intellectual threat. So that's the threat that I see to atheism. Yeah, so I don't think it's like a existential or like the atheists are not trying to physically harm me. I don't think so. Maybe some of them are. I don't know. But I just tend to like, I'm not a big pragmatist. So like I know John is too. Like a lot of people really care about what's sort of practical or pragmatic. And I am personally more interested, and I've just always been this way. I'm more interested in intellectual and sort of epistemic ideas. Like what is true over and above like what is the biggest sort of threat to my life. I'm more interested in like the big ideas. And so from my studies, I've seen that in atheism, at least, when you look at the scholarly defenses of it and the objections that people give, atheists, scholars, and philosophers give to arguments for the existence of God, and then the something like the problem of evil, there are really interesting and powerful arguments that atheists have used. So I come at this from like an intellectual perspective. It's also just something that I'm sort of more interested in. So I'm way more interested. Part of that is just my background and like what happened in my life. So it's very trying to think of the term, maybe idiosyncratic. It's just very specific to me. This is what interests me. Atheism interests me more than say Judaism or Islam. I can see where you're coming from, where you're like, this is, I mean, you're convinced that if Muslims became in power, like a world power, then it would be really bad for everyone. And so I can understand like the motivation that you've got.
You're muted, AP.
Cameron, I want to clarify. That's not even the issue right now. The issue is so just approaching it from an intellectual point of view. So I don't even want to care about the whole political aspect of it. I'm just wondering if we just come to the intellectual side of it. Why is Islam a lesser problem, and why is atheism the huge problem here?
I think it's more just idiosyncratic to me. I'm more interested in atheism personally.
And yet you say Christians and Muslims.
Yeah, well
blanket statement. Christians and Muslims.
Not every belief held by most Christians and most Muslims are contradictory. As worldviews, Islamic theology and Christian theology share far more overlap than an atheist worldview and Christianity. It makes logical sense why Cameron would think that Islam as a theological system is closer to Christianity than atheism, because it is closer. I mean, not only is monotheism held in common, the idea of an afterlife is held in common. The idea that the human soul is immaterial, survive death, that's held in common. The idea of objective morality that is informed by divine guidance, that's held in common. There's a whole bunch of shared rules and ethics between both religions, including the 10 Commandments. That's what they hold in common. And in fact, this is not just a theory thing. Back in 2007, 138 Muslim scholars, and since that time, 300 more Muslim scholars, signed a document that they sent to all the leaders of all Christian churches, including the Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant churches. And this document is called the Common Word. And it's a few pages, and it lays out a set of theological and ethical common principles that 300 Muslim scholars representing all Muslims in the world share with all the major Christian churches. And you can read about this document online. It's called the Common Word. And all the major Christian churches responded and endorsed this Common Word document. There's been nothing close to this between, say, a Christian church and atheists, because objectively, the theological and ethical worldviews between Islam and Christianity share much more in common than between Christianity and what AP believes. It's only natural.
It's quite obvious why that is, because there is no such thing as an atheist worldview or an atheist church. It's not a thing.
No, but any atheist, pick any atheist, right? An atheist. I've yet to meet an atheist who believes in life after death. I've yet to meet an atheist who believes in monotheism. I've yet to meet an atheist who believes in divine revelation.
Okay, that's a very strange argument, because theistic Satanists are a thing, right? Theistic Satanists have much more in common with Christians than they have with atheists in terms of their beliefs in the hereafter, higher beings, a specific prescribed morality, and so on. Would you therefore think that it is a better idea for Christians to work together with theistic Satanists than with atheism. So would you think that from a Christian perspective, that would be the lesser evil?
It all depends on the issue, right? See, Cameron laid out the issue. He said to combat atheism and ism. He didn't even say atheists, to be fair. Cameron said there's this ideology called atheism, and Christians and Muslims. You notice Cameron didn't even say Christianity and Islam. He just said Christians and Muslims. It's just
I didn't call it an ideology.
Cameron, can I ask you that, Cameron? If for example there were these three groups, you have you as Christians, you have atheists, and you have Satanists who are theistic and who actually believe in the existence of and lordship of Satan and so on. In that case, I don't want to put you on a spot and whatever, but just as a thought experiment, would you then collaborate with the Satanists against atheism or not?
Maybe if a Satanist had like a good argument against atheism, I would be interested to hear what they had to say. I wouldn't like just disqualify them just because they were.
Cameron Bertuzzi teams up with Satanists.
But that's not the point. But that's not the point. So the tweet.
The Catholic Church, at least since 1960, the Catholic Church has been talking about there being some truths within Islam. They write the plan of salvation includes Muslims. I mean, these are like major church teachings, and Cameron is just being consistent with what the Catholic Church has been teaching for like the last 50, 60 years. I don't know what is so controversial about this.
Cameron, if we took this tweet here and said, by the way, Christians and Satanists should work together to combat atheism, what do you think?
Do it, Cameron. Tweet it.
Maybe I'll just tweet that tomorrow, and we'll do another stream about it. I don't know. I don't really know much about Satanism. Are there actual Satanists who like?
Yeah, there is a distinction between most Satanists are not really theistic Satanists. They are atheists, but there are
they're like parroting.
But there are actual
Satanists. There are. I've met some of them.
Yeah, so most of
believe in Satan, and they've decided to be on Team Satan.
Yeah.
Do Satanists ever argue with atheists though, AP? Have you debated a Satanist?
That would be funny.
I actually have had a discussion. I actually have had a debate before, but that was in Turkish.
Tell James over at Modern Day Debate to set it up. He needs to announce that he wants an actual Satanist who believes in Satan and God and so on to debate an atheist. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. That'd be fun. I'd watch that one.
Anyway, so conclusion, Cameron, just admit that you made a huge mistake here.
Yeah, apologize to atheists.
My goal was actually to get David on my side, and it was way easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah. So. You just had to clarify some things. Yeah.
I just had to literally just explain it for
I'll go ahead and say it here.
Minute.
Everyone should be united in exposing atheism as a bankrupt ideology. On that issue. On everything else we might disagree, but that's the one thing all four of us can be on the same page about. And other disagreements we'll have, we can do that. We can deal with those. But atheism is done.
Did you say all the four of us?
Yeah.
All the four of us are against atheism.
Yeah, remember? No, I haven't forgotten where I said atheism's dumb earlier, and AP said yeah, and then he tried to correct.
Oh yeah,
it,
true.
It was too late.
It was too late.
But John,
why we're doing this?
Said this in the chat. I don't know if Cameron remembers this, but me, Cameron, and John, years ago on Facebook, we used to be part of some group, and we did actually debate atheists. Like I remember, so we literally have collaborated already on this very thing.
Who was
this?
I
think the thing is that, and that's why I don't really have a problem with Cameron's tweet, because he used like the personal terms Christian and Muslim, right? There are atheists today who actually can help us both. So Joe Schmidt, who's this brilliant philosopher, right? You guys all know him. He engages in debates about theism, and he specifically says that he's an agnostic. So maybe I should correct myself. He's an agnostic, but he specifically says, I do this to help theists sharpen their tools, right? So we can also learn from agnostics, atheists, and in fact, when you read Muslim, Christian, Jewish philosophical works from the medieval era, they were debating atheists. Like, we noticed atheist arguments are mentioned, and a lot of the theists have to engage those arguments and then improve their own arguments. So really, what's really important, I think, is, I mean, we have all these different beliefs, but we still have to live together on this planet. And we need, despite different worldviews, we need a cosmopolitan ethic. We need a list of values and ethics that, regardless of our religion, we'll all live by, that will guarantee that all of us have the freedom to believe what we want to believe, to practice what we practice, to do it safely, and that on certain projects like getting rid of poverty, addressing world hunger, addressing pollution, we should be able to use a common ethical framework to come together on those issues. And frankly, I can say this here, it's YouTube, but religion exists outside of YouTube. So yeah, Ali Dawah, Muhammad Hijab, they're like the internet Muslims, but real Islam, real Christianity, and even real atheism, humanism, this is on the streets. This is on university campuses. This is in soup kitchens. This is at homeless shelters. And I've seen it myself. I participate in interfaith stuff at my university. When I was at Harvard, I did that too. Many of you might do that. I've been part of these collaborations. And despite the harsh words being exchanged on a YouTube channel, Muslims, Christians, Jews, humanists, atheists, and others, they're already working together to address problems of a common humanity. And I think that's really what needs our attention. And just because we work together, it doesn't mean we still can't have these debates. As long as we treat each other ethically, then I don't think there's a problem.
AP, I wanted to say something else about the comment about the would you work with the Satanist thing. Mm-hmm. I mentioned earlier on that my tweet was never intended to be like, hey, any Christian is going to work with any Muslim to respond to atheism or anything like that. I wasn't saying that like I was going to send a private message to Ali Dawah and try to partner with him on the argument from contingency.
You did that. You did that in a video. You tried to partner with him in a video, trying to help him make a better argument. You did that. I
tried to. True. I did try to help him out.
And then he responded by blasting you.
Yeah. So I guess the point is that my standards for someone that I would work with are pretty high. So I've got to find someone whose intellect I respect, whose arguments that I respect. So I don't know that I would find that in a Satanist. So practically speaking, I probably wouldn't work with the Satanist, but with Muslims, I don't think that I would have as difficult a time finding a Muslim who is philosophically inclined and can think through these arguments. I just don't know them. I'm not familiar with a whole lot of Islamic scholars or philosophers. I know Christian philosophers. I know a lot of Christian philosophers like Josh Rasmussen, Rob Koons, and William Lane Craig. A lot of Christian philosophers who meet that standard. But I just wanted to make that clarification. I'm not saying that every Christian should partner with every Muslim.
No, that was just
and talk about atheism.
That was just in response to Khalil Andani saying that that Muslims and Christians have this whole thing in common, that they believe in a higher power and the afterlife and this and that. Just in response to that, I wanted to make the comparison to theistic Satanism. Other than that, of course,
Satanists have some things in common. Yeah.
Apply the same logic to Satanists. So that's why. But otherwise, I wouldn't think so. That's not really an example. That's not really a question I would ask as an objection to you.
Yeah, as far as what Cameron's saying, I mean, you can fight. You just have to be careful, because if you start looking around for a Muslim who defends the contingency argument, you're going to get one of the Dawah guys. And I don't trust a lot of the Dawah guys, but you can find academics like Muslim philosophers and stuff like this who
forget the Dawah guys, right? Like, so look, you guys have, so David, you have a PhD. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. Cameron, you've had people on with PhDs, Rob Koons, Edward Fazer, right? A lot of these people are professors. So what you should do is you should have the equivalent Muslim. So Ali Dawah is not the equivalent of Koons and Fazer, or it's not, right? The equivalent is a Muslim who has a PhD in the relevant field and who at least publishes in journals on these topics. You can find those people. There are people like one person, Dr. Zaripur, he's at University of Birmingham. He publishes on the contingency argument in Ibn Sina, right? There are others like there's Shaf Chaudhary. He's a Sunni philosopher. He just published a paper on divine immutability and prayer, petitionary prayer. We have these people. However, the difference is this. Notice Edward Fazer doesn't have his own YouTube channel, does he? No. Rob Coons doesn't have his own YouTube. So we academics, we tend not to have time to just go on YouTube like you guys do. We only go on usually when someone with a platform invites us. And while thanks to Cameron, the Christian philosophers before Cameron, they didn't really have a platform. Now Cameron started a trend. Now we have 4 or 5 platforms for them. The Muslim philosophers of our day, and there are less of us because we are later immigrants to the Western Academy, but we exist, but we don't have a platform. We only go on when we're invited, and I'm too busy between kids and school. I can't be on my channel all day. So the Ali Dawas of the world, these people, they don't seem to have like a day job. It seems like their only job is to take a camcorder and go to Speaker's Corner and yell at people and upload it online. Sometimes you see them with the camera and like Hijab is driving in his car or something in a parking lot. And that's all they seem to do, right? They just produce mass content. There isn't a lot of quality there. And now Hijab and co, they've realized that they don't have academic credibility. So they're trying to do their PhDs, but they're late to the game, but they're still not part of academia. Like they don't come to conferences, they don't publish. So you need to if you want to have these engagements, which you should, you need to get the Muslims who are actually working in academia in some respect.
The issue is you bring up average popular Christian scholars. The equivalent to that, popular known Muslim scholars. I mean, who can we really think of? If I think of the equivalent popular Muslim scholars, we think of...
It's not popularity. That's a false equivalence, right? It's not just popularity. So again, Edward Fazer is popular, but he's not popular because he has a 1 million subscriber YouTube channel or
that's not what I mean. But when we think of
why is Edward Fazer popular? But why is he popular, right? He's popular because he writes peer-reviewed books in English, right? William Lane Craig is popular because he writes peer-reviewed or at least scholarly reviewed books in English. They're not popular because of YouTube, but the Ali Dawa industry, it's purely YouTube. It doesn't have engagement in any part of academia. Like when something that's sponsored by the Vatican holds an interfaith conference in Germany, I'll just give you an example. When they think of Muslims to invite, they don't invite Hijab or Ali Dawa. They actually invite people like me, right? At the American Academy of Religion or at the Evangelical Theological Society, you don't see the Ali Dawas over there. There are people in my
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that, but I'm not
popularity, saying... I'm just saying popularity is not a reflection of quality.
I'm not saying... I'm not talking about Dawa people. I'm not talking about random YouTubers. I'm taking into account what you have just said. I'm specifically talking about scholars, about academics in Islamic fields. Okay,
Hamza Yusuf is a great
example. Can you tell me, I don't know, 5, 10. Can you list me some of the most popular Muslim academics? Just a few.
Okay, academics. So,
but
again,
I'm not saying So once
popular to who? AP popular to popular to.
Well, I just give you a standard. I mean, the standard is, for example, when we think of Christian academics, we think of specific people who are very well known, right? Who are academics, who are equivalent Muslim academics that are very well known on the same level.
Okay, so well known in academia or the lay public?
Well known and okay, I guess
that matters.
There, yeah. Both.
I think what we could say here is there are Muslim academics who are in the world of academics. They're having discussions in that world, and people online might not have any clue who they are. Like YouTubers might not have any clue who they are, whereas YouTubers are going to be familiar with Ali Dawah because he's on YouTube all day long. And so it's like social media is giving a skewed view of who, you know, the voices are. So if Cameron wanted to do something, I'm sure he could pretty easily ask around, like start contacting people like, who do you know in the academic world who does work on, let's say, the contingency argument or this argument or that argument, because that person, if he's doing good work on an argument for the existence of God, that should be something that should be popularized, and it would be something that Christians and Muslims could agree upon. So why not get that person on for a discussion, explain his argument, and then once, you know, then that person will start getting so having an impact, not just in the world of academics, but also in the popular world, and also simultaneously let people know that, hey, you shouldn't just take Ali Dawah as the standard bearer for this religion. Now, the concern that I'm sure AP and I would share right now is that we see the kind of Islam that is growing in popularity. And it's a kind it's a kind of like, you know, Daniel Hakikachu and, hey, we need child marriage and stuff. It's like the stuff that's becoming popular is stuff that horrifies us, and we say, what's going on here? But you know, that problem could be mitigated.
David, I want to say it's not even that. No, it's not even that. I mean, I started speaking about Islam and against Islam in public, not because I saw the trend of Salafi Muslims on YouTube and whatever it is. In fact, when I decided to start speaking out, I wasn't even very familiar with the traditionalists that are currently popular, with the Salafis. I was more popular with mainstream Sunni Islam, you know, with the Hanafi school, with regular mainstream non-Salafi beliefs. And my problem was primarily with beliefs that Muslims all around the world share. Yes, of course, the current trend of Salafis and of these extremists like I don't even want to call them extremists. These radicals like Daniel Hakikachu and Muhammad Hijab is problematic, but that's not the only problem to me. The problem is, in my opinion, mainstream Islam altogether.
No, what I mean is you could in theory have the same issue with atheists or with Christians or something like that. Like suppose like you looked at Christianity one day and you found out that the biggest booming group was like a Westboro Baptist church or something like that. Well, then you probably want to be concerned with that and dealing with that. And if you notice that things became skewed towards that view, you might want to ask, well, why is that? And if you could maybe do something about that, then you should. Because I'd like a world where Daniel Hakikachu and Ali Dawah and Muhammad Hijab are not the most popular voices for Islam. I'm not sure, but notice, I mean, they're the ones who are becoming massively popular, and so
what do you do about that? Online sphere, right? So in the online sphere,
not just online.
That's their focal point, right? Like,
but, okay, then let me ask you this. Actually, very crucial question.
Like Ali Dawah Mosque, right? Like, there's no Ali Dawah Community Center.
Not yet.
Ali Dawah.
Not yet.
I know, right? But for example,
that would be terrible.
Yeah, it would be. But the thing is that if you want to judge the popularity of a certain type of religion's interpretation, you can't just look at a YouTube channel or Twitter account. You'd have to look at spaces, like physical spaces, congregations. You'd also have to look at where are the imams of a mosque being trained? Like, who's giving them certification? So now,
I want to ask you one thing, Khalil. I want to ask you one thing. Since we are coming to what the general population or what most Muslims actually hold. Now, I know most people here who are listening do not, about your beliefs, your Islamic beliefs, your positions, your theological creed, your theological understanding of Islam, your sect, your jurisprudential beliefs, and so on. Would you say that your ideas are in alignment with most Muslims around the world when it comes to theology and jurisprudence?
So the ideas that I personally practice,
That you
or my
personally
academic. So
hold and
are
also
we
are.
talking? Are we talking about what I, Khalil Andani, theologically believe and practice, or are we talking about my description of Islamic history and thought?
We're talking about your beliefs in theology. For example, I think of an example where you went on a panel to have a debate with a Muslim apologist who happens to be a very skewed Salafi. Nobody knows what he actually is.
Yes,
But
yes,
but you had a discussion with him on theology, for example. Do you
yes.
think your ideas there are representative of Muslims around the world?
So some of my theological ideas, what I call Islamic Neoplatonism,
But most are
histo-
not.
sorry.
But most are
No,
not in
so
alignment with Muslim.
no, so it depends, right? So there are some beliefs I hold that are only held by Ismailis. So those are only held by Ismailis, right? Which is the 15 million. But there are other beliefs that I hold in metaphysics, such as what I call Islamic Neoplatonism. And those beliefs, although not the majority of Muslims today, they are held by a sizable number of Muslims today and a majority of Muslims historically. And I had, if you remember that debate, I had a whole list of names on my early slide listing all major Islamic thinkers who subscribe to that same metaphysics that I subscribe to, which I call Islamic Neoplatonism. That it was very popular well beyond Ismaili circles. So it
Okay,
depends on the issue.
but it's clear that your beliefs overall are not in alignment with the beliefs of most Muslims around the world.
It
They're
depends
fringe.
which belief, right? If you're saying my belief in the imamat of the Ismaili imamat, only Ismailis believe in the Ismaili imamat, just like only Catholics believe in the Catholic Pope, right? But if you're talking about my metaphysics, which is not Ismaili specific, then my metaphysics is actually quite popular among Muslims historically and to a continuing degree contemporarily.
But not representative of most Muslims around the world.
I mean, we'd have to do a study on if you're asking about Muslims now. I don't think many Muslims know what their metaphysics is, but if we checked what sources are Muslims learning their metaphysics from, we'll find that a sizable number of Muslims today continue to deal with metaphysics inspired by Ibn Arabi or something in that tradition. And to that extent, my metaphysics, I don't know if it's a majority of Muslims, but it's held by a sizable number of Muslims.
Yeah, so I would say that they are largely not representative of what is preached around the world in Muslim mosques and
Well, to be
schools.
fair though, mosques don't really preach metaphysics. Metaphysics is
I mean,
learned.
they lean on it, don't they? They lean on. I mean, it's fundamental to the idea of Allah's nature, which they preach. And
No, but if we're talking about very specific metaphysical issues, that is not talked about in mosques. That's talked about more into. Let me give you an example. So you guys heard of Hassan Spiker?
who?
Hassan Spiker. So Hassan Spiker is a mainstream, traditionally trained Sunni Muslim scholar and academic. He's an English convert. Okay. So he has like traditional Sunni Muslim training. He identifies as an Orthodox Sunni Muslim. Just Google him if you don't know who he is. His metaphysics, which he calls the metaphysics of Ibn Arabi, is almost the same as my metaphysics. And he just wrote a book about metaphysics where he responds to Western Kantian anti-metaphysics with Ibn Arabi's metaphysics. And you can even see he has a diagram on Blogging Theology, and his cosmological diagram is very similar to the diagram that I was defending in my debate with Jake. And Hassan Spiker is a traditional Sunni Muslim. Hamza Yusuf, very similar idea. Hamza Yusuf is also in line with this Akbarian type of metaphysics. So it really depends where we go, who we talk to, and so on.
Okay, yeah, understandable. All right.
So that's another guy Cameron could talk to, right? Hassan Spiker.
Maybe
We have all these people who are not Ali Dawa types, who are actually well read, who've written books, articles, who are soft spoken, who can have a great conversation. People didn't know this. We had a whole conference in 2022, I think, on the problem of evil, and we had I think 20 Muslim philosophers, all Western trained academics like myself. We all had a conference on the problem of evil, and we've published a whole book. And it's all contemporary Muslim responses to the problem of evil, all by Muslim philosophers. We don't have a YouTube channel, though, to advertise, right? This is what the Christian philosophers have through people
but
like
Cameron. Why would Cameron not just talk to the people from Yaqeen Institute, for example? Why would he not?
I think he should. I think he should talk to people from Yaqeen.
They're very
because Yaqeen, although I don't agree with everything, Yaqeen, I would say, is a representation of American Muslim leadership,
and that is very problematic.
He should talk to them, but he can have a conversation with Yaqeen, because Daniel Hakikatu hates Yaqeen, right? All these other people hate Yaqeen. I think you should also talk to Hamza Yusuf, who runs Zaytuna College, which is a Muslim liberal arts college in USA, which is accredited. You should also talk to Hamza Yusuf. Like, if you want to talk to Sunnis, Yaqeen, Hamza Yusuf, Yasser Qadhi, sort of, he still has some Salafi, but he's like a Salafi-oriented Sunni. So you should talk to Yasser Qadhi. But remember, not every mainstream community leader is also a philosopher, right? So Yasser Qadhi doesn't really like Islamic philosophy. He hates it. He's against it. But Hamza Yusuf is all about Islamic philosophy. I think you guys should be talking to these people, because these people have communities behind them. Like, Hamza Yusuf leads an entire academic community. Even Yasser Qadhi does. But Ali Dawa and co, they don't have communities behind them. They don't have institutions behind them.
Khalil, did you say a book came out of that conference on the problem of evil?
Yes, yeah.
What, you remember what it's called?
Yeah, it's called Evil, Suffering, and the Global Pandemic, Muslim Responses to the Problem of Evil. It's something like that. It just came out, published by Routledge. And it's a whole bunch of us Muslim philosophers. There's another guy that you guys could talk to, Cameron. Again, I don't agree with him theologically, but I want to acknowledge him. His name is Jamie Turner, and I think he's a PhD student in philosophy at Birmingham, and he deals mainly with epistemology, and he engages like Planting and all these other thinkers from an Islamic perspective. There's another guy I should just mention for you guys. There's Imran Ajaz. He's a philosophy professor at University of Michigan. There's another scholar named Zain Ali. He's a Muslim philosopher as well.
Okay.
I know
here's the problem.
They're not on YouTube.
Here's the problem, Cameron. So we have just mentioned quite a few Muslim scholars, especially those who are known to the public, like I don't know, Yasser Qadhi came up, the Yaqeen Institute, and those people came up. Many of these people have abhorrent beliefs about your religious beliefs. Very, very abhorrent beliefs about your religious beliefs, Cameron, about Christian beliefs, about Christians, which they also expressed before in the past and even wrote articles about society, about little girls, about apostates. Lots of these people, you could, of course, come together with them and talk about what you have in common with them in terms of theology and why you both think that God's existence is a more reasonable thing to believe in, as opposed to the non-existence of God. But if you want to go beyond that and then speak on Christian theology and what you actually believe in and how they regard that, and when you then go on and talk about the problems in society and what their solutions to these problems are, you will very, very quickly get to some extremely disgusting grounds.
Sorry, AP, who are you talking about now? So Hamza Yusuf has problematic beliefs about what?
No, I wouldn't say. I would say that I am more respectful of Hamza Yusuf. He hasn't been, as far as I know. I don't know. Some people brought up a few things before about him, but as far as I know, he is quite reasonable, mostly.
He said on record.
But for example,
he doesn't believe in apostasy.
For example,
he doesn't believe in cloning or any of these things.
Yasser Qadhi, everyone here is familiar with Yasser Qadhi and the.
Yeah, that's why I said I qualified Yasser Qadhi. But the point is this, right? Firstly, when you talk about theology, what do you say? Oh, they have negative view of Christian theology. But to be fair, AP, Christians in America and all over the world have very negative views of atheists. Atheists after Muslims or right before Muslims are like the least favorably viewed group by Catholics and Protestant Christians. Like
atheism is dumb.
Yeah, so Protestants and Catholics do not like atheists, and they think atheism, they think very lowly of atheism, and vice versa. Atheists in America and Europe have a very low view of Christians and Muslims. So that's
but there is a difference. There is a difference between having
what's up with that,
view. There's a difference between having such a view of people and therefore thinking that they should probably change, and then also on the other hand, viewing people who have different beliefs, such as when traditionalist Muslims approach Christians, viewing others as deluded enemies, disbelievers.
They don't view. Excuse me. Traditional Muslims and so traditional Muslims don't view Christians as deluded or as enemies.
Okay, they do.
No, they don't.
They do. Yeah.
No,
you know this.
Where are you getting this from?
You know this very well. They view them as deluded.
Where are you? No, prove it.
Deluded is basically based on the Quran.
Prove it.
That's how they read the Quran. Read Quran chapter 9, verse 30.
9:30. What does that have to do with Christians? Where does it say Christian? Where does it say? Where does the Quran say that all Christians are enemies of Muslims?
I also have to say that,
wait a minute.
Where does it say that?
We just talked about deluded. What does it say in Quran chapter 9, verse 30?
Surah 5 is the last surah of the Quran to be revealed. It says Muslims and
not according to Sunnah.
No.
What do you mean no? Surah 5 is the last surah to be revealed, not Surah 9.
Okay.
Now, no. Surah 5.
What does it say? We just brought up a chapter. What does it say in Quran chapter 9, verse 30?
Yeah, it criticizes the Christians for believing that Jesus is the Son of God. Of course, we know that.
And what does it say about them? Can you tell me?
It says that they're wrong. It doesn't say that they're the enemy. Can you find me where the Quran says that Christians are the enemies of Muslims? We just talked
about being deluded. So in Quran chapter 9, verse 30 says, the Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah, which, by the way, no Jew has ever said in the world. And the Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. That is their statement from their mouths. They imitate the saying of those who disbelieved before them. May Allah destroy them. How deluded they are. This is literally what Quran chapter 9, verse 30 says. Did I make that up?
This is not about all Christians, and you know that.
This is about all those Christians who believe that Jesus is the son of Allah.
This is about a specific... So it begins in 929, and 929 is not talking about all Christians. And we know this because 929 has the partitive expression min from among the people of the book. That's in 929. Other verses of the Quran say not all the people of the book are the same, and it goes on to praise them. This is in Surah 3. And then in Surah 5, the Quran allows Muslims to marry Christians. Okay, so if you thought
which
Christians
are
what?
Which Christians is this about?
Again, 929 is about a specific subset of Christians.
Which
not
Christians?
All Christians. It's about the Byzantine. It's about the Byzantines.
Where do you get that from?
This is what the Islamic sources actually say about 929. It's about the reported invasion of the Byzantines, and it's not talking about all Christians. You can just look at what the Arabic says.
Where in the Quran does it say that this is just about the Byzantines?
The Quran doesn't have to say that. All the Islamic sources say that.
The traditional Islamic interpreters who have, the most famous one is Ibn Kathir, for example, right? What does Ibn Kathir
Kathir comes centuries later, and he's not the most famous. Why do people keep repeating that Ibn Kathir is the most famous? He's not. His tafsir is not even in the top 20. How can he be the most famous?
Okay, what are you
talking about?
When we look at most traditional tafsirs, what I see is that this is generally seen as talking about Christians. Where do you get the idea from that this is only about the Byzantines?
The earliest tafsir that we have.
Which one?
Tafsir of Mujahid.
Mujahid?
Yeah.
What does it specifically say?
It says that 929 and 930 are revealed specifically about a group of Christians, namely the Byzantines. And in fact, this interpretation that is not about all Christians is something that is repeated by the scholars of Al-Azhar in the 1930s. That it's not about all Christians. This is a mainstream interpretation. And even then, Surah 5 is revealed after Surah 9, and Surah 5 actually says the nearest in love to the believers are Christians.
And what does it say? And what does it say in verse 72 to 75?
It criticizes Christian beliefs, but again,
does
a lot of those criticisms. What?
It only criticizes them. What does it specifically say? Do you want to go there?
Yeah, let's go there. But I'm telling you that in Surah 5, verse 82, it says that the Christians are the nearest in affection to the believers. So this is proof that obviously the Quran is not against or calling all Christians deluded. Otherwise, it wouldn't say that.
That's a very interesting point. What does it say about the Jews?
Again, it's talking about the Jews in certain groups of Jews in Medina.
So when it says something good about Christians, it is talking about Christians. But when it says something bad about
you're
Jews
totally
in the same
missing.
context,
No, you completely misunderstood what I said. You are claiming that Surah 9 condemns all Christians. That is your claim. And then you're further claiming that all Muslims today see Christians as deluded. Both of those claims are false.
We have that. You connected this to the other, to your other evidence, which you cited, which says that Christians are nearest in affection to Muslims. Which do you use as evidence that Islam is actually viewing Christians in a good light? But you disregard.
I'm using it as evidence to counter your prior claim that the Quran condemns all Christians as deluded.
Okay.
It clearly cannot be the case because the Arabic doesn't say that, and we have another verse that praises some Christians. So what the Quran does is
some Christians. Okay.
Yes.
What is the Islamic attitude towards Christians in general?
The Islamic attitude toward it depends. Who are you asking?
I mean, what is the Quranic attitude? What is the Quranic attitude toward Christians?
Okay, the Quranic attitude to the people of the book is to say that some people of the book are righteous and they believe in Allah and the last day. Surah 3, verse 113, and other verses say that. Okay. Other people of the book, the Quran criticizes for certain things that they do. There are certain Byzantine theological ideas that Surah 5 criticizes, which is in some of the verses that you point to.
Which things?
Which what?
Which things? Which things that Christians do?
Guys, just so you know, this would be a pretty big discussion on this issue. What is the Quran on this, and as far as bringing up, going through the verses and so on. And I'm pretty sure we view things very differently on this. So I would recommend saving this part of it for like a future discussion, because
my only point is this: it's a real stretch to read a verse of the Quran and say, this means all Christians everywhere at all times are deluded, and then say, therefore, based on this reading, all Muslims today who believe in Islam view Christians as deluded.
I mean, just read this Quran verse,
and to be fair,
okay, that's fine. We can conclude this with this. But let's
to be fair, you can you're an atheist. Many Christians view your beliefs as misguided or deluded.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
You view theist beliefs as deluded or misguided. So even if you thought a belief was deluded, like a flat earther, it does not require you to treat the person who has the belief with no human dignity and respect.
Well, I mean, fighting people based on their beliefs, condemning them.
Islam doesn't teach you to fight people based on their beliefs. Where are you getting this from?
I mean, your interpretation of 929 is that it's only for specific Christians, but that's not the general Muslim idea.
In Muslim society, did you have an all-out, all-time war against all Christians? No, it never happened.
You generally had a war against Christian societies altogether in order to spread Islam.
The only people that Muslims. Okay, do you have any reports that in a Muslim society every night a Muslim militia goes out and slaughters every single Christian? It never happened.
No, because that's not how it works.
No, your reading of the Quran is wrong.
You are presenting a very specific scenario which is unrealistic and wrong. That's not how it works.
You are reading the Quran in a way that no Muslim has ever read the Quran that way. No Muslim has said
that's how I
929 means I'm going to go out and kill everybody based on their soul beliefs.
That doesn't make any sense. That's not what I said. What it is.
That is what you said. You just said fighting people. That's what you said.
Guys, Have I just said that this is how Muslims read the Quran? That Muslims go
let me
out
repeat.
and fight people?
I
No.
said that.
What I
even if,
said, what I said is, please don't put words in my mouth. You are being very disgusting again. So
But you said that.
That's not what I said. Please shut up. Stop with that nonsense. So what I clearly said is that the Quran tells Muslims to fight those who disbelieve, who don't believe in them, who don't adopt the religion of truth from them, which is specifically what chapter 9 verse 29 says. So the whole idea that this is just about specific people is a complete lie. In Islam,
no, that
in
is
Islam,
what you just said is a lie. What you just said is a lie.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's show you dishonesty.
Yeah. Let's go to 929.
929.
Okay.
929. Okay. Quran 929. Right. Let's read what it says. You really want to do this here with us?
Yeah, read it.
Fight against those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful, and who do not adopt the religion of truth from those who were given the scripture. Fight until they give the jizya willingly while they are humbled. Khalil Andani, according to this Quran verse, what are the conditions that these disbelievers have under which it makes it obligatory for Muslims to fight them?
Okay, so this says, number one, there's a group and they have a description.
There is no group here at all. What does it say here? What are the requirements?
Okay, then I'm sorry you don't know your Arabic, because first it says Allah. It says right here Aladina. Okay, that's a those who. So that's a group, and it describes the group's views. It says they don't believe in Allah, and they don't believe.
Al-Ladina just means those who. That is how the Quran describes every single community around the world.
Very good. Now let's keep reading.
Okay. So I'm asking you a very simple question. It's very clear and cut.
So
it says, fight those who do not believe in Allah. So what is the detail here?
Okay, but firstly, this group of people, they don't believe in Allah. Okay. And they don't believe in the last day.
And
they don't consider lawful what God and His Messenger have made
unlawful.
Okay, but hold on, it's a full description. They don't adopt the religion of truth, and that word Islam has been added in. It doesn't say Islam.
I know.
Okay. And then it says, from among those given the book.
Right. So those who are given the book, the people of the scripture, of those who do not adopt the religion of truth, they are to be fought.
Okay. Now that is not okay. What you just read here is not the Quranic description of Christians in general. Because the Quran says that Christians and other people of the book believe in Allah in the last day.
And
so do they also all of them?
Do they also consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful? And do they also adopt the religion of truth?
Again, the religion of truth is not a name for what Muhammad brought. The Quran uses the term religion of truth to refer to this meta idea of submission to God. My colleague Javad has an entire YouTube video just about this, including this verse. But the
Christians and Jews consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful?
It doesn't matter. Jews and Christians believe in Allah and the last day. So this doesn't apply to all of them.
So what is this criteria here then? Unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful.
Okay, my friend, these descriptions are all linked by a conjunct, wow, meaning and. So to meet this description, you don't believe in Allah, you don't believe in the last day, and you don't consider these things lawful and unlawful. The Christians and the Jews, according to the Quran, many of them believe in Allah and the last day. It says they are not all alike. So this verse cannot be describing all Jews or all Christians. And the proof of that is it says at the end, min aladina, from among those who were given the book. That min is partitive. It specifies a subset. So it can't be all. It can't be all people of the book.
Can I ask a question? What is the semantic range of fight?
Again, this verse
is
about like
you're shooting yourself in the foot. I want to ask you a question.
Basically.
Is there a Christian group out there that is bad and that is supposed to be fought by the standards of this Quran verse?
Yes, so this verse, according to even Islamic Sunni tafsir, this verse was revealed when the news of a Byzantine invasion came. So it's talking about the invading Byzantines. It's not talking about all Christians.
Did those people believe in God in the last day?
No, the Quran says that these people don't. But again, it says other Jews and Christians believe in God in the last day. So your argument doesn't work.
Okay, that makes no sense at all. But
and in fact, the interpretation of this verse by Al-Azhar in the 1930s says that this only refers to a Christian group that militarily opposes the Muslim community.
A Christian group which does group which does not believe in God and the last day. Okay.
Yeah, because because the Quran describes groups based on their actions and their conduct. So if you have a group that goes and fights innocent people, if you have a group who call themselves Christian and then they bomb everybody, despite what they profess, they don't believe in Allah or the last day because their actions completely contradict belief in Allah and the last day. But other Christians believe in Allah and the last day.
You are aware that Byzantine Christians still exist in our time, right?
The Byzantine Empire doesn't exist in our time. And there's no Byzantine Empire invading the Muslims. But in theory, let me tell you how this could be applied. So when the French army went into Algeria during the times of colonialism, the Algerian Muslims staged a defensive jihad against the invading French colonizers. That would be a valid application of this verse.
I rest my case.
Almost.
I mean, okay.
I rest my case.
David, you were shaking your head a lot. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like a million, but there's like I needed to go over an hour ago. Wow. I've got one of my kids watching one of my other kids, and the kid who's watching their kid needs to be in bed right now. So just for a future discussion, I am interested in alternative understandings because my understanding of passages like Surah 9 verse 29 and so on has been through the lens of Sunni Islamic scholars and so on, and based on my reading of those sources, they do refer to a Byzantine army in Syria, but those are people who would have been fighting the Persians, not about to invade Arabia. And then the response, Muslims go up to fight, and the Byzantines didn't even want to fight the Muslims. They didn't even show up to the battle. And then there are some issues like, the 929 is going to be very confusing if you are interpreting this as referring to a Christian group that doesn't believe in Allah or something like. Now, I'll agree that you can read it like Khalil saying they don't really believe in God and so on, but you can also read it. It's also been common to read that as when it says believe in Allah on the last day and so on, it's believe in the Islamic understanding of these things, which Christians wouldn't. And the main problem is if there's any clarification required, it's the very next verse. Well, the subsequent verses which would give the understanding, and the very next verse is the one that say Christians condemns Christians for saying that Jesus is the Son of God. And so, in other words, if you ask what does this mean in Surah 9 verse 29 about not believing in Allah, and the very next verse says they say Jesus is the Son of Allah, it sounds like it's claiming, well, Christians aren't believing correctly about Allah. And all of the verses after that, Christians take Jews and Christians take their rabbis and monks as lords and so on. And that entire passage, you can go through it. If Allah is really talking about invading Christian army, it seems like it would have been good to put anywhere in the entire passage something about this having to do with an invading Christian army. Because every single criterion for fighting people in the entire passage has to do with basic Christian beliefs or practices, or basic Jewish beliefs or practices, or in this case, beliefs that no Jew has ever had. And so, I know Khalil could respond, but I do have to go. But I just wanted to sort of state my view in a nutshell. I would be totally open to having a pretty straightforward Quran, conversation about it in the future.
The Quran is orally recited speech that's recited in a very time-place situation. It only becomes a book later on, right? So you can't apply the standards of a self-contained book to this document. So at that time, after this news of a Byzantine invasion has been spread around, these verses are revealed, and the audience knows exactly what's being talked about. We are just removed because we're engaging the Quran in different format. Now, just for people's records, several tafsir actually say it's about a Byzantine army. So Mujahid ibn Jabr, he died in the year 722, the earliest tafsir we have, Sunni, Proto-Sunni, he says it's about the Byzantines. Tabari says it's about the Byzantines.
That's fine.
Bagawi says, even
the
Ibn
Byzantines
Kathir,
were not invading.
Even Ibn Kathir says it's about the Byzantine army. So the tafsir actually...
It doesn't say it's only about them.
No, but that's the historical moment the verses reveal.
I know, but it never says.
Right. This is from a Sunni perspective. This is the eternal speech of Allah that is handed down in certain situations. The Byzantines were invading. No one wanted Arabia. The Byzantines are up in Syria because they want to fight the Persians. And then Muhammad gets the command: fight those who do not believe. And if this was if this was limited to Byzantines, probably could have clarified who this is responding to. Two, shouldn't have included Jews there. It just says people of the book.
Why?
And so it's this ongoing problem.
Why do the Sunni sources say it's revealed about the Byzantines? Also, if this verse,
I would agree. That's their understanding. That's their understanding of Christians.
But David, does this make sense to you? So this verse, if you guys, I've seen you guys do this on YouTube. Mm-hmm. This is like your bread and butter argument. So you tell all these Christians in the West that all Muslims have a duty.
I've never said anything about all Muslims.
I have never said any of that stuff.
You say that Muslims.
We have never said any of these things.
Okay. I say this is what Islam teaches.
We have never said any of these
things.
So
you say that Islam teaches Muslims to kill Christians.
No,
because they are Christians.
No, I say no.
I have never.
No, I've never said that. Islam in 929, and again, I really have to go. Islam in 929, and especially if you associate it with the Hadith commands, if you were to take into account all things like various stages that Muslims can be in different status, different levels of strength in an area, and so on. If you put it all together, this is what. And I can pull out books where at least Sunni scholars would agree with me that jihad proceeds in stages. If the Muslim community is weak and can't fight, who's the
first guy to say? Who says this? Because now, if you want to play the game, no.
This is the only way I can even make sense of the Quran.
But the Quran doesn't say it doesn't have these stages.
Right. What you have in the Quran are a bunch of totally contradictory passages, and the way to make sense of them. Yes, it is. And the Quran has a very let me clarify. Come on, you guys talk for a while. Let me just break it down. I have to go. My understanding is, and if you can make sense of the Quran in a different way, I'd be totally open to it. This is the only way. This is the only way I've seen, and I've invited you to have a discussion on this. But the way I understand it, the way I can make sense of it is based on the strength of the Muslim community. If you're not strong enough to fight, no, you don't fight. You don't walk around killing people. You don't do any of that. When you're strong enough to wage defensive jihad, then you wage defensive jihad, meaning other people have to do something to start it. You don't just go out. You just don't go out and fight. But then you have the final marching orders, passages like "fight those who do not believe," and that's offensive jihad. And there you're fighting people specifically because of their beliefs and practices. And so I'm reading that, and let me put it this way: if that means something else, if fight those who do not believe in Allah means something else, and if the justification for fighting them, is that Christians say Jesus is the son of Allah, that really sounds like it's a call to subjugate when the appropriate circumstances arise, namely when the Muslim community is the dominant, strongest party. Then you can reduce people to dhimmi status, but it's fight them until they pay the jizya and feel themselves subdued. So it's not slaughter them. You fight them until they acknowledge their second class status and they agree to pay you. And so that's how I'm reading it. And if what that really means is fight an invading army of Byzantines, you already had commands like that in the Quran. You already had commands that you can fight people who are invading. You already had that. If Allah has already said that you can fight invaders and you can fight people who are attacking you, And this commands, and it was clear in Surah 2. You're talking about fighting people who are doing something to you first, who've persecuted you or attacking you or someone. You have passages like that already. If Allah then reveals this additional passage where it really sounds like you're fighting people based on their beliefs, it's like, why put it this way? I'll just say,
where does it say that they're being fought because they believe Jesus is the Son of God? Because the verse says they don't believe in Allah and the last day, and it says it's a portion.
Khalil, you just claimed that even
the other thing, David, is
the Romans.
David. There are a dozen.
On the screen.
Well, can I finish? There are a dozen verses in the Quran revealed before 929 that all are consistent. Only fight those.
Yeah. So what do you need? What do you need the extra one that sounds like it's a command to fight everyone?
Okay,
and I just want to say, Khalil, you would never accept it. You would never accept this. If Joe Biden tomorrow said we have to fight those who believe in Allah, and you said every Muslim in the world, rightly, and people like me as well, would say, "What in the world are you talking about? Fight those who believe in Allah? What are you talking about?" Suppose his response is just, "No, I only meant Boko Haram." Be like, well, you really need to clarify that. You really need to say that. You really need to make that that very, very clear.
Look, there are at least two things that make it clear. Number one, for past 20 years before the verse is revealed, at least 12 times, maybe more, the Quran is very clear: only fight those who fight you and do not aggress.
And the Quran is also clear on abrogation, that these verses can be abrogated.
Really?
In favor of later verses.
Can you tell me where
Surah
it says?
Surah 2, verse 106.
No. Tell me where it says 920. No, tell me where the Quran says 929 has abrogated all the war verses before that only permit the
Quran never says this verse abrogates that verse. You have to look at it and say this one came later than that one, and it says something different.
So we can't assume an abrogation. So what you have is the Muslim community has heard orally a whole bunch of rules of war that repeatedly prohibit them from fighting someone offensively, and are only allowed to fight in defense.
That is not true.
It is true. Secondly,
show me where it says that.
The Quran in Surah 5, and let me finish, man.
Show me where it says that.
In before 929 and even after 929.
Show me where it says that Muslims are forbidden from fighting those who do not fight them. Show me where it says that they are only allowed to fight those who attack them.
There are multiple verses on this. Surah 2 verse 190, Surah 2 191, 192, 193. There are verses in Surah 8 that say this: do not aggress. Fight them only if they fight you. I mean, like, this is very well known.
It doesn't say do not aggress. It says do not transgress. Those are completely different things.
It says do not aggress. God does not love the aggressors.
No,
it says only fight them.
No, it doesn't.
AP, it says only fight them if they fight you. And this is not just my opinion.
Do you think this is a transition
the opinion of all academic scholars?
All academics?
Yeah, all academics say this.
What does it say here? What does
guys,
it say here?
I gotta dip out. Just want to say bye to everyone. But Khalil, I'm totally open to sitting down, bringing out the passages, reading through them. I could share my interpretation.
This word means aggression, not transgression.
Oh yeah, this is just my these people were too dumb to put the real words here.
Okay, hey, I'm gonna head out too. Thanks for the invite, AP, and Khalil. I'll see you later.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Well. Yes, I'm still here. Yeah, so that was a very clear lie. I don't know. At some points and during the discussion, I became very, very impatient. Because when he interrupts and when he twists my words, I mean, where in the world did I ever say every single Muslim out there wants to go out and kill Christians? Or every single Muslim out there wants to go and stone people? I never said such a thing. Completely made up. Straw man. But yeah. What? Did I kick him out? I didn't kick anyone out. What are you talking about? I just finished the whole thing together. I thought that they're done. I didn't kick anyone out. If he wants to come back, he can come back to clarify that. But I'm about to leave, and I want to give a quick monologue and run down of a few things. No idea what that claim is about. No, I didn't kick him out. No. Fight in the way of Allah. It doesn't say aggressors, it says transgressors. That's how people always understood it. Anyway, whatever. He's gone now. I don't want to argue and debate after the guy is gone. I guess if we want to follow up, we can have more discussions about this. I want to quickly read some super chats here. Wow. What? Why are there so many super chats? Okay, why are there so many super chats? I really appreciate the many super chats. This is very, very nice. 61 super chats. I have never had this many super chats on a live stream. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate that. But let me quickly go through a few here. Well, thanks, everybody, for bearing with us and with me through all of this. This is going to be like watching your parents fight. Oh, that was the very beginning. AP is using his neighbor's internet, so it will be a while. Bob once said, make this as a contribution to contribute with great riches, just like the Muslims always say. Thank you. I appreciate it very, very much. Jean Rossi said, a mental hacker said, Cameron, I was talking to you. Oh, unfortunately, the thing was so heated, I couldn't read super chats or direct them to my dear guests here, so I'm sorry about that. I should have probably clarified that from the very beginning. Ask the Copts in Egypt how Cameron's teamwork plan is going. Exactly. One thing that I mentioned before, I was looking for groups to donate money to raise money for in the past, and I contacted this group in these Coptic people in Egypt, and they wanted to know where I'm going to organize a fundraiser, and I told them about my channel. That they said that they really appreciate my intention, but they asked me to please not make a fundraiser because they are already always in fear, and it could get them in real trouble if they are associated with a channel that is about criticizing Islam. That's how Christians live in Muslim societies. Jean Rossi said, Muslims can't take us as allies or friends. Yeah. Peter Michko, you really don't want to work with people that want to kill you. Have any apologetics? Didn't we have this same very super chat last live stream? I already answered this. I don't think so. But thank you, Grace. Chris Lynn said, why won't Muslims let scientists examine the black stones? Black stone would be very interesting. Andani is selling us takia fried chicken. Khalil forgot about the red square. Whoops, 180-degree backflip from I don't know what that is in reference to. There were lots of such cases. Pedro Rodriguez said Christians are getting killed in Africa by Muslims all the time. Where is this guy living? Jean Rossi said raciste. I'm just reading this with a French thing. Maybe it's not even a French. It's not even meant to be a French accent. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just doing it for fun. Some people said great work, AP. Thank you. I appreciate it. I really need to be calmer, I guess, sometimes. But there is a thing. Like when I discuss with somebody in person, face to face, I am much more reserved and collected and calm. But when we are online, and when I get interrupted repeatedly, I feel like every single interruption shoots an annoyance and anger bar very, very high again and again and again. It's very, very hard for me to keep it together. And under those circumstances, it is extremely hard to put your words through, to put proper sentences together, to make proper arguments. It's just very, very hard when you sit here. But yeah, I need to work on that. Quran 551 proves everything Khalil says wrong. Muslims can't take Christians as allies. The Quran is full of these passages. Let's stop pretending the opposite. According to Islam itself, if you take Christians as allies, you're not a Muslim. Yeah, well, he also said that even Ibn Kathir agrees that this was just about specific Christians. Obviously not. I put it on the screen. Ibn Kathir's interpretation of the Quran specifically, prominently, popularly says that this is about the people of the book, meaning Christians and Jews all together, and Muslims are not allowed to honor them. Watching Hysteria said ChatGPT just confirmed that communism has no official religion. I mean, that was just their ideology was atheism. I mean, seriously, that's stuff that I heard from people who have never opened a history book, and I couldn't believe that he said this and then actually justified that by saying, I am the professor, I am the doctor. And he's not even related to the actual field. But yeah, the Soviet Union was built on the idea of communism. Atheism is an aspect of communism and what they shared in terms of their worldview. And that just means their rejection of religion. But on top of that, they also practiced state atheism, which is an ideology that is specifically against religion and wants to suppress religion. Atheism is not an ideology that comes with certain tenets which say that you are supposed to suppress religion. No such thing exists. That's completely nonsensical. Debotro said they were Christian communists in 1980s in Latin America. Communism is not atheism. Yeah, I mean, Cuba is an example of Christians and churches still in existence, communists themselves believing in Christianity and so on. That's just absurd. John Calabro said atheism, moral are based on whatever they want: socialism, individualism, anarchism, LGBT, environmentalism, humanism, feminism, or even hedonism. Fits perfectly with atheism. Yeah, atheism is not a worldview. That's just absurd. Europe is secular. We leave room for Christianity plus other religions. There is peace, equal rights. Now look at Sharia countries and the texts they use. Other people also did bad things. So Islam nice. Who is not an extremist according to Khalil? Khalil. Khalil, that's his name. Yeah. Khalil, just because there's no dhimmi class today and there's no jizya, that means Islam is not timeless and is only applicable for the 7th century. Thank you for proving Islam false. Happy Camper, will our super chats pay for Cameron's therapy after this live stream? I really feel bad for Cameron here in this situation, but I guess he learned a few things here, including that he shouldn't make such dumb tweets. Al said, apostate prophet is about to stone Andani. Rashid White, Khalil is a 21st century Muslim. Does he think gay marriage is allowed in Islam? Where does he draw the line? If he's going to, I should ask him these questions. I can't even speak anymore. I should probably take a break and drink some water. You know what? In fact, since professionalism of this stream is completely out of the window, never mind, I wanted to go for a walk quickly and come back, but no, I'm not going to do that. Rashid White said Khalil is a 21st century Muslim. Oh, I already read that. I'm completely confused. My brain is like soup. Humanist Reformation said, does Christianity need to team up because it's falling? It might be the second largest religion soon. Should have asked that to those people. Hey, what's up? I should have you on here again soon. That would be nice. I love a good thick book. Oh, this one. It's very funny to me that he didn't even know what this book is. I don't know. Maybe I have a bias because I myself belong to the Hanafi school, which is the most popular school of jurisprudence in Sunni Islam. But this book is very well known, and I find it strange that he, as a scholar, didn't know what this book actually is. Paige Prawn said, what is the name of this article AP is citing? I don't even remember what it was. It might have been the Pew Research. Was that? Or are you referring to the Pact of Umar? I don't know. Where is Sam Shimoon? That would have been catastrophic. A kafir is a kafir. Kafirs unite. Europe is secular. Under this non-religious laws, we live all in peace, with equal rights for people of faith. Our laws protect both. We live like friends. Oh yeah, and we fought communism. Explain that to someone who says communism is atheism. Brandon Monty said, the inconvenient truth. The report finds The overwhelming majority, 80% of persecuted religious believers are Christian. I think that's also a Christian research, to be honest. But yeah. Sarah said the statistics about stoning is the article he was asking about. Yeah, that is. Oh, I still have it over here. Do I? Oh no, I don't. That is a Pew Research study from 2011, I believe, which researches Muslim views on morality, Muslim views on Sharia, and what kind of Sharia should be applied, and all that. If you search for Sharia Pew Research poll or stoning Pew Research, you will probably find it. Right. The inconvenient, I read that. Christians and Muslims can debate how Christianity is false. See, free speech, just don't insult the Prophet or leave Islam. I mean, it's just ridiculous that he didn't want to answer too many of those questions, including apostasy laws, the Pact of Umar. And by the way, I specifically said Pact of Umar is so accessible that you can even find all of the information on its Wikipedia page. That's how accessible it is. And without knowing what the Wikipedia article actually says, I want to quickly go to that, because he said this is not a relevant document, nobody applied it, and so on. I want to make a test here. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and go together with all of you live through a few parts of this article. The Pact of Umar. The Pact of Umar, also known as the Covenant of Umar, is a treaty between Muslims and the non-Muslim inhabitants of either Levant, Mesopotamia, or Jerusalem that later gained a canonical status in Islamic jurisprudence. A canonical status in Islamic jurisprudence. Khalil Andani was telling me that this document is of no relevance and was never used. Of course, I would like to. Is there a source cited for this? Mark Cohen on the Crescent and Cross, the Jews in the Middle Ages. I'm pretty sure I read through this before in the past. I mean, this is what the Wikipedia article says. Is it wrong? Maybe Khalil Andani should come and correct this article and say, hey, this is completely wrong. It was completely irrelevant. Nobody had any use for this at all. It says a canonical status in Islamic jurisprudence. Please, man. It specifies rights and restrictions for dhimmis, or people of the book, a type of protected class of non-Muslim peoples recognized by Islam, which includes Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, and several other recognized faiths living under Islamic rule. There are several versions of the pact, differing both in structure and stipulations. While the pact is traditionally attributed to the second Rashidun Caliph Umar ibn Khattab, I was even wrong here. I thought it is generally attributed to the Umayyad Caliphate and to a later caliph named Umar II, but it is prominently attributed to much earlier, to the second Caliph Umar. Funny. Of course, this is all debatable, but this is what the findings are so far. It contains rights and restrictions. There are debates on the authenticity and which time it actually belongs to. All fair. I have mentioned the very same things. And here you can actually find some of the things that this Pact of Umar contains, which is based on the text that I believe should also be found somewhere in the whatever. Let's just go to the contents that are listed here. Prohibition against building new churches, places of worship, monasteries, or new cell. Prohibitions against rebuilding destroyed churches by day or night in their own neighborhoods or those situated in Muslim quarters. The places of worship of non-Muslims must be lower in elevation than mosques. Houses of non-Muslims must not be taller in elevation than the houses of Muslims. Wow. Prohibition against hanging a cross on the outside of churches. Muslims should be allowed to enter churches at any time. Obliging the call to prayer by a bell or a semantron to be low in volume. Prohibition against Christians and Jews raising their voices at prayer times. Prohibition against teaching non-Muslim children the Quran. Christians forbidden to publicly display their religion or to be seen with Christian books or symbolism. Palm Sunday and Easter parades were banned. Funerals to be conducted quietly. Prohibition against burying non-Muslim dead near Muslims. Prohibition against raising a pig next to a Muslim neighbor. Christians were forbidden to sell alcoholic beverages to Muslims. There's so much here. Prohibition against telling a lie about Muslims. Prohibition against preaching to Muslims in an attempt to convert them from Islam. This is specifically what I brought up in our discussion. Was it allowed in Muslim societies to publicly preach to Muslims and tell them to convert? According to this document, no. Whatever, man. There are even some really messed up things here, like here. The appearance of non-Muslims has to be different from that of Muslims. Prohibition against wearing qalansuwa kind of cap that Bedouins used. So they have to look distinct. Non-Muslims obliged to be identified by... Is this too small? I'm very sorry, man. Obliged to be identifiable by such signs as clipping the heads, forelocks, and by always dressing in the same manner wherever they go, with binding the zunnah around the waist, Christians to wear blue belts or turbans, Jews to wear yellow belts or turbans, Zoroastrians to wear black belts or turbans, and Samaritans to wear red belts or turbans. This sounds very familiar to different issues that happened throughout history, right? Anyway, so very, very strange. Very, very strange that he wouldn't want to talk about this. Actually, it's not strange at all. Quite understandable that he wouldn't want to go into this. But yeah, that's what we're dealing with. What was going down in the Holy Land when Islam's domination was questioned during Nicephorus II's reign? Dr. Elvis Burr said, how many churches are there in Saudi? Cameron, LOL. Carlo Magno TV said, public practice of any religion other than Islam is prohibited in Saudi Arabia today. No evangelization, no Bibles, no crosses, no churches in public. In several Muslim countries, in over a dozen, I think it is illegal to preach to Muslims and to convert them to Islam. It is illegal to have public parades for your non-Islamic beliefs and so on. Paul Sene said Cam needs to study Islam more on his own so that he can better understand the ramifications of his tweet. This whole time I look like a dwarf here. Rasa, Islamic apologetics do this to Mughals too. For centuries, Mughals persecuted Hindus. Some proofs pick exceptions to conclude near no persecution. Abundant data otherwise is conveniently ignored. Typical. I talked to... Robert Hoyland, I really appreciated that guy a lot, who studied early Islamic history. He can tell you all about how Muslims brutally invaded surrounding places and didn't even care about preaching Islam to them initially. They just wanted to ransack, destroy, kill, and Islam then is imposed once they have the power over people. That's how they were in the beginning, until things became more... things were put into a system, and then this whole idea of preaching Islam directly through invitation, and if they reject it, then you go in and invade and impose Islam by force, and so on. These things were later on established systematically, but initially Islam was very barbaric. John Calabro said, David would agree with joining Muslims in fighting abortion. Adam Steker is the undisputed king of Islamic debate. I've never seen him do this, but I will believe you. What Dr. Jekyll said, I wish Sneaker was on the panel tonight. I wanted to I recorded something about Sneaker, which I'm probably gonna publish tomorrow. Not much. I don't want to spend much time with Sneaker. The guy is an idiot. And I felt bad before about calling him an idiot, but then today I decided to dig a little bit deeper and find out why the guy was actually banned from YouTube, and it was some horrible, horrible stuff. And now I don't feel bad at all about insulting that guy. One shouldn't confuse wokeism, aka leftism, with atheism. Wokeism is an actual religion. Oh, it's not. It's an ideology. People just want to fight for what they personally believe is right. That's what people are motivated by. That's what people have been motivated by throughout history. Here's a few dollars for Cameron and Khalil to join heads and come up with the next Kalam cosmological argument. AP provide possible refutations. Humanist reformation, as long as religious people want to legislate their beliefs over everyone, I think aggressive atheism stays. And based on facts and history, I doubt religious people can do that. Thank you. Thank you for standing up as a fellow atheist against all these cruel religious people here that just want to take all over here and fight us. Thank you, Humanist Reformation. Thank you. RX said, new atheists are a loud political minority. Yes. Other atheists have been against them from the start loudly. All I care about is that we can coexist peacefully. I don't want to get rid of Christianity. I love you guys. See, I'm an atheist. Technically, I'm not a new atheist who is out there bashing religion and trying to get rid of it. Most atheists that I know of are not people who are against religion and who want to, debunk and destroy Christianity and all religions and all that. That's a myth. That is just when you pay attention to the loud ones, the ones that you see prominently on the internet, and think that represents the average person out there. That's not really how it is. Paul Sinney said, Cam considers it the lesser evil because he doesn't know much about Islam. He needs to go read up on it on his own. I mean, even if he says that it's an intellectual issue, again, as said, Muslims have the tendency to, as soon as they can make conversation with you, convert you to Islam. I mean, it's very, very well known, very notorious. If he wants to say that Islam is not a big threat intellectually because it is very dumb, I will agree with him, yes. Louisa Capel said, AP is defending Christ and Christianity better and more than David. Nah, I wouldn't say more than David. I mean, he knows more. He does it more, does it better. I don't even defend. I just want to correct. It's just, when I see some false stuff being said and spread, I just want to correct it. That's what I do. Where Christians and Muslims disagree on pedophilia. Oh boy. XWLZXX said Tom Holland in his books likens atheists as Christians without God, and that they are both Western morality, and says that Islam has historically been quite different and culturally distinct. This is a very long topic, very I don't know, you have to really analyze the meta of where atheists get their morals from, but I do argue that Western atheists are the way they are because of Christianity. And atheists in other parts of the world are different from post-Christian atheists. And some atheists might not like this when they hear it, especially if they are like against religion, against Christianity and all that. But even the whole the secular atheist idea of having this sense of justice, social justice and compassion and defending people's rights, I'm sorry to say, I think is largely influenced by a Christian way of thinking. And you will not find the same priorities of having mutual respect, social justice and stuff like that among atheists in some other parts of the world. Atheists who come from different religions will be more aggressive and more focused on different things. Will be more focused on their own individual liberty and just, I don't know. But yeah, secular people, even atheists, are necessarily influenced by the culture that creates them, that raises them. And in that sense, Western atheists, and I include myself in that as well, are influenced by a Christian way of thinking, of course. And that is, I mean, that's just, yeah, it's the truth. You can't deny it. Connor said, for Cam, he's gone. He's dead. Would you say Muslims should team with Christians against atheism? But because Islam also denies the gospel, it is also equally important for atheists to team with Christians against Islam. Yeah, I should send him this question. Why no Christian in most countries? No Christ Dawah. They're not allowed, man. Not allowed. Wrong, Khalil. The Catholic Church teaches that there is no salvation outside the church. Did he? Yeah, whatever. What is this live stream about? Nobody knows. Brandon Monty said, thanks to Khalil, I'm ready to go to church in Iraq. To be fair, there are, in specific parts of Iraq, there are churches, if you can call them that, but it's a very, very problematic environment, especially now. I've been to 2 places in Iraq before, and yeah, the northern part of Iraq, which is the Kurdish regions, is actually quite nice, except that ISIS completely messed it up. And then Turkey invaded parts of it later on. But going from the Kurdish areas southward is just a bad idea altogether. John Mathers said, that which can be asserted without evidence can be discarded without evidence. Imaginary friends aren't real. All deities have something in common: perpetual silence and perpetual invisibility. This is very, very bigoted and very racist against religious people. Please apologize. Jesse Branch said, great discussions. Questions for Khalil and Cameron. After the atheists are defeated, what happens to offensive jihad when the Ummah is strong enough, like what Sheikh Asim al-Hakim was talking about? Well, at first the Muslims take care of the atheists, and then they turn to the Christians and say, haha, now let's come to you. That's how it works. Happy Camper, I wonder if the book discusses PDF files. For those who don't know what PDF files means, who haven't thought that far, it's pedophiles. I can say it. RX, they say Jesus is God. How deluded they are. Who are the Christians that don't say Jesus is God? I know, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, the Quran is quite clear. If you believe that Jesus is God and you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, then you are deluded. Allah may destroy you. Muslims are supposed to fight you. You will go to hell forever. You are the worst of creatures, and so on. That is what the Quran says. In order to somehow understand it differently, you have to completely deviate from what it says and make up a non-existent context and play with words. It doesn't work. And Sovo Fargo said, love y'all. Okay, what was that for verse? I want to do that quickly. He brought up Quran chapter 9 verse, no, Quran chapter 2 verse, what was that? Where he said, it says Allah does not like the aggressors, and that word is actually aggressors, not transgressors. That's where he is at. I quickly want to check what he says though there. What it says there. I mean, I might have been wrong on that verse if I check that for a second. Fight in the way of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress. Allah does not like transgressors. That's what the Sahih International Version says. In the way of Allah, those who fight you and do not transgress. But the word is tardu, which is always used in the Quran for transgression, but also used for being hostile. Okay, whatever. Nobody knows what the Quran really says. Happy Frenzy said, capturing Christianity, please read the Quran carefully and keep up to date on all the Islamic sources. Start with Surah 65, verse 4. I'm sending all of these things that are addressed at capturing Christianity to him directly so that he can sit down and bury his head in shame and think before he makes such stupid tweets in the future. And yeah. Valerie said, just tuned in, but in a majority Muslim countries, it is not safe for Muslims to convert to Christianity. Look at any persecution map. I know, and he knows that too. WLZ said, it says, fight people of the scripture. I mean, yeah, it's just, we beat that to death. I guess everybody can read the verse and make up their own mind. It clearly describes fighting those who don't believe in Islam. Khalil is a pathological liar. AP, Islam and Christianity are not the same. We know. Anthony LaFleur, thank you. I appreciate it. Paige Prawn said, keep up the good work. Thank you. Ray Cosby said, please ask Khalil to send a translation with the word aggress. There might be translations would actually have that word, to be very fair. to be very, very fair. But I don't think that is what it says, because traditional Islamic scholars do not agree that the Quran limits fighting only to being defensive. And Quran chapter 9, verse 29, clearly and very, very clearly. I mean, do you really want me to do? I just. Quran 9:29. I mean, seriously, how can you read this verse and seriously claim that this is just about specific groups of Christians, just those who fight you, just those who did some bad stuff? And come on, man, don't be ridiculous. What happened here? I'm not looking for tips. Oh gosh, what? Quran chapter. Oh, I have searched for those here. Yeah. I feel like I look at this verse 1,000 times per week. Fight against those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful, and who do not adopt the religion of truth from those who are given the scripture. Fight until they give the jizya willingly while they are humbled. Wow. It clearly talks about Christians and Jews who do not adopt Islam from the Muslims. That's it. That is quite clear. Fight those people of the book who don't believe in God, the last day, do not consider forbidden what Allah and His Messenger Muhammad make forbidden, and who don't adopt the truth from Muslims. That's it. And if you want the traditional understanding of this very verse, we can look up the tafsir. Look up any tafsir. You can find the one from Ibn Kathir, for example. Idolatry is no longer allowed. It says further down here. Where is that? The order to fight people of the scripture until they give the jizya. It explains that when the people of the scripture disbelieved in Muhammad, they had no beneficial faith in any messenger or what the messenger brought. It does here bring up the whole context of fighting the Romans, but then it further says, pay the jizya if they do not choose to embrace Islam in defeat and subservience, disgraced, humiliated, and belittled. Therefore, Muslims are not allowed to honor the people of Dhimma, meaning those non-Muslim minorities, or elevate them above Muslims, for they are miserable, disgraced, and humiliated. This is about people of the book, Christians and Jews. It's not about a specific group of people. Ah, boy. Oh, boy. MP to claim to have the... Oh, yeah, and he also said this was about specific Byzantine Christians who were attacking the Muslims. Christians who didn't believe in God and the last day in order to qualify for the... What in the world, man? To claim to have the perfect book and guidance for eternity, Moshe should have made it clear it was just about the Byzantines, if that is what he meant, but didn't. Is this perfect communication by a perfect man? Southern take, you should have asked him why were Muslim women hurling their babies over razor wire, hoping they would make it to the U.S. soldiers when we left. Paged Prawn, considering Cameron mentioned the academic atheists have very powerful arguments against theism, would you be willing to use those arguments against Islam? Probably. I should come together with Cameron and just discuss these things without having this interruption from the Muslim side. But yeah, man, what a mess. What a mess. Nevertheless, it was actually an enjoyable stream, at least for me. I had a lot of fun getting angry, and I hope everybody else enjoyed it too. Yeah. Byzantines did not attack. Muhammad made it up as an excuse to get the jizya and booty from Tabuk. Yeah, the report says that that they got news that a Byzantine army is marching toward the Muslims and they're about to attack. So Muhammad sends a a group of people there to encounter them and to battle them, but it never happens because they never arrive. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might not be very strong with the historical aspect of things, but that's how it happens. He sends his men, but the Byzantines never arrive, and the fighting never takes place. Yeah, and the Byzantines at the same time were fighting the Persians. They had been fighting the Persians, the Sassanid Empire, for a long, long time. They were exhausted. Their resources were exhausted. They were weakened. There was inner turmoil about losing war, about overthrowing and replacing the emperor. There was the same struggle among the Persians that this battle has taken a huge toll. That this war has taken a huge toll on the Persian society and the resources, and that we need to recover. In both the Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire, there was the desire to put an end to all of this, to get rid of the emperors in charge, to replace them. I think in the Sassanid Empire, actually, as a follow-up, a replacing of the emperor took place, and then with that whole inner turmoil, the Persians were exposed to invasions by minor Arab tribes from the south, and minor tribes from other regions, from northern places, from nomadic northern people, that they were very weak against. So both of these empires were extremely weakened, and the Muslims, the Arabs, took advantage of this. It wasn't like the Byzantines were bored and they wanted to attack the Muslims and all that. That's just nonsense. Whatever. I'm just regurgitating what I read from several books. One of my favorites is, I would recommend, I should probably read it again because I keep forgetting the facts about this whole stuff, the early history, but where's that book? Oh, here. It's a brilliant book, In God's Path. The Arab Conquests and the Creation of an Islamic Empire explains very, very well, very nicely how Muslims actually started, and how Islam as an empire came into existence. And it shows the reality of how it wasn't a centralized, Muslim society coming together and expanding in a very organized way. No, he explains how this was, how the Muslim empire formed by different Arab tribes independently invading and taking over, and then eventually coming together and pledging allegiance to the Muslims by will or by force. And that's how the Islamic empire forms. Like, for example, after Muhammad died, the wars of apostasy, the Ridda wars, broke out. And the caliph after Muhammad, Abu Bakr, had to start a huge campaign against Arabs all across Arabia who didn't want to follow the caliphate, who were independent, who had their own claim to prophethood and their own claim to being their own state. Oh, yeah, did I mention the book's author is Robert Hoyland. Robert G. Hoyland. I had him here on my channel before we talked. But yeah, that's basically how it goes. John Calabro said, if the Byzantine and the Persians were not fighting each other, how could Islam spread? I mean, Arabia was so unimportant that the Romans didn't even care about it. They didn't care. And in that carelessness and exhaustion, the Muslims came. David, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Oh my goodness, go to sleep. Like it or not, Christians and Muslims will unite to obliterate atheism. You're finished. You're finished, boy. You're finished, man. You're finished. I know you're listening. You're shaking. Imagine if that's how we talk to each other. Habib made a super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. I'm dead. I need to go. I just love how this has become a meme. You see? HT said, name a better religion than Islam. I'll wait. Impossible. That challenge is just as impossible as the challenge to write something better than the Quran. Facts. Thanks, everybody. I have to go. Thanks for watching. Thanks, everyone. And have a fantastic day. And what? Stop talking about Dave. He's here. Man, David, he talks so much. He talks so much. It's just unbearable, man. David Wood talks so much. I just want to tell him, can you please stop? Can you stop? We got it. We get your point. Just stop talking, man. He won't stop. Terrible, terrible. No regard for people's patience, for people's time, for people's tolerance levels of how many words can you take per minute. No, he just keeps talking. Terrible, terrible. Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic day. And as always, stay away from Islam. Or, as somebody else likes to say,
stay away from Islam.